There was a follow-up. Black folder.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Annual General Meeting of Electors. I'd now like to introduce the presiding member, Mayor Emma Cole, and invite everyone to take their seats. Please QR code on the way in, sign in at the back desk if you haven't done so, and please keep your masks on indoors unless you're speaking at the forum or at the microphone. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Annual General Meeting of Electors, as our CEO has just said. We welcome you to North Perth Town Hall this evening. I'll declare the meeting open at 6:07 p.m. and start by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay our respects to elders past and present. We hope that you like coming here to North Perth Town Hall. Traditionally, we have held this meeting in our council chamber, but we're very keen to get out and try our different halls and make it easier for people to attend. So I'd be really interested in your feedback at the end of the meeting about whether this worked better for you. Now, just a little bit about this evening's meeting. We do need to deal with the annual report 2020-21 annual report first. So what we will do is we'll take a presentation. Sorry, that's very loud, yes. Sorry about that, everyone. We'll take a presentation from our CEO and our Director of Community and Business, just to give a bit of an overview of the annual report. And then we'll take some questions before we ask for a mover and seconder. And then we will move to general business, where it's your opportunity to ask a question, move a motion. And when we get to that point, I'll just give you a little bit more information about how that works and where to come forward, etc. So before we do that, we will take any, well, just to let you know that we do have all council members in attendance this evening, but we are all here as electors. And as electors, it is really up to you if you choose to vote. Personally, as I am both an elector and a council member, you'll see that I don't vote on motions at an AGME. That's because we then deal with a report coming back to council on the motions adopted this evening. So that's a choice that I make for that reason, and then it remains open to other council members, stroke electors, to make their decision on that. So just in case you wonder why some of us vote and some don't. So without any further ado, I'll move to the CEO to give us a rundown of our annual report for the period 2020-21. Thanks, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. So the purpose of tonight's AGM is to receive the annual report and present it to electors. This covers the financial year 2020-2021. It attaches our financial reports as audited and received and adopted by council at the end of last year. Reflecting the times we live in, we are now all masked on, but we were finalising the annual report at the end of last year in what seemed to be a more benign or positive outlook for COVID-19, and the year 2020-21 really was consumed by the city's response to the pandemic and all the adjustments we needed to make to the services we provide for the community, support we provide for small businesses, and also the range of services and the way we deliver our services internally as well required a large amount of adjustments. But we were able to make progress on council's strategic direction as underscored in the strategic community plan, and we were able to progress the projects as budgeted for during that financial year. As you know, all would be well aware, several weeks in, we were preparing for the major rollout of the FOGO project, which was successfully commenced at the end of last year. We spent a lot of time and effort and working with our community on our community engagement framework, our youth action plan, public health plan, which gained increased prominence as a result of the focus on COVID-19. I'll speak a little bit more about the Vincent Rebound and Recovery Plan, which was the city's response to COVID-19. We completed a major planning exercise on the Leadable Activity Centre and Precinct Plan, a major capital works project at Beatty Park. And for the last couple of years, the city has had a dedicated focus on how to improve our performance on asset management and sustainability. The annual report does outline the range of progress on all the strategic projects which Council had adopted and funded during the financial year, which includes a continued focus on implementation of our sustainable environment strategy and a range of master plans, and a particularly important road safety initiative around 40 K zones, which was included in our accessible city strategy, which is the whole of City of Vincent strategic transport and traffic plan. I'm going to run through briefly the progress and key initiatives in our service areas, which included in our governance area a huge increase in the review of council policies, which was a focus during the year. We did have a large number of outdated, long-standing policies which were in need of updating and review, and we were able to successfully increase the amount of policies which were reviewed by council during the year. On the human resources side, is a particularly challenging year for staff who had to, both professionally as well as in their personal and family lives, have to deal with a huge amount of change related to COVID restrictions, which impacted everyone in some way and everyone slightly differently as well. But we were able to maintain a very committed and engaged workforce, and that was recognised during our employee engagement survey by the city receiving the Best Workplace Award for 2020 by the Voice Project. We are experimenting tonight in terms of the mobility of our information technology and communication services by trying to, for the first time, bring the council chamber out of the civic centre and administration centre. And last year we were able to move council meetings electronically as required, and we are now able to embed that technology to make council meetings more accessible to the community, to residents and to stakeholders, including the ability for council members to participate electronically via Zoom and the live streaming. There's a huge support and focus on placemaking and supporting our local businesses during COVID-19, and I'll speak about some of those initiatives shortly. There was a great amount of uncertainty around the economic outlook for the City of Vincent going into the pandemic, but with a huge amount of stimulus funding from both federal and state government, we did see a spike and increase in activity in the building sector that resulted in a large increase in the amount of planning applications. 312 new homes and renovations to existing homes during the financial year, and that was a 16.4% increase compared to 2019-2020. There were also some large-scale developments such as the ABN building on Vincent Street, which has transformed the Leederville town centre. Maintaining our parks to an incredibly high standard remained a focus, and if the Mayor permits me, I'd just like to take the opportunity to note the retirement of the manager of parks at the City of Vincent. The City of Vincent's one and only ever manager of parks, which is Jeremy van der Broek, who finishes a 25-year-long career with the City of Vincent this week, and he's been instrumental in transforming our parks and reserves over that time to be the places that you all love and enjoy on a daily basis. Waste services and implementing the council's waste strategy was a key focus throughout the year. I've already mentioned FOGO. We smoothly implemented the cessation of commercial waste services in the city, which has resulted in a much tidier streetscape in our town centres and in our main streets. You would also be aware that we've now started, or imminently about to start, the Verge Valet service for bulk waste, which we'll be seeking feedback on from the community throughout the year. BT Park, as well as the library, but maybe BT Park, given its size and complexity, was the facility most impacted by changes to COVID restrictions and what could or couldn't be undertaken in terms of a recreation centre and a swimming pool. The staff there have just been outstanding in terms of being able to maintain, to wherever possible, the highest range of services for the community for this much loved facility. The council did decide to bring forward a major refurbishment of the indoor pool. We thought there was a possibility at the time of recreation centres and swimming pools being closed for an extended period. In light of that, we brought forward the renovation of the indoor pool, the tiling, the plant room, and that resulted in a major upgrade throughout that facility, which has given it a new lease of life. A short review of our major plans and strategies. I mentioned the Vincent Rebound Plan, which was the council's response to the pandemic. The range of initiatives that we undertook in implementation of that plan during the financial year involved disbursement of funds from the Leederville Gardens Trust to vulnerable residents. There was a range of initiatives around art funding and grants that were implemented. We undertook streetscape enhancements, as well as a range of community initiatives around pop-up play and building relationships with our community, increasing the amount of graffiti removal and the like to provide the best possible appearance for our streets and throughout the town to support residents and local businesses. I mentioned the Sustainable Environment Strategy earlier, which continues to be a focus with the community's interest in how we're responding to climate change. And we continue to have a strong focus as a council on reconciliation and implementation of our Reconciliation Action Plan. The annual report outlines the range of activities and initiatives we took in this area. We also had a strong focus on governance, including updating this and initiating the city's first governance framework and the introduction of a new fraud and corruption prevention plan. The big focus for council over the last couple of years, including during our budgeting process, is addressing a legacy of underspending on asset maintenance. We've got a large stock of assets in terms of transport, roads, footpaths, parks, reserves, and a large number of buildings which are in much need of more investment. And we developed and went through the process engaging the community on an asset management and sustainability strategy, which is setting out the long-term direction for the city to bridge the gap between what we have been spending historically on asset maintenance and what we need to make sure those facilities meet the expectations of the community. And that will be an ongoing focus leading into the annual budget process this year. During the audit process, we still have work to do on our financial ratios, particularly around asset sustainability, and that's a key finding during the preparation of our financial reports, and that has been an issue for the city over the last few years. That will require a concerted effort in terms of prioritisation on how we spend our existing revenue and what the long-term rating strategy for the city will be in terms of bridging the gap between our current spending on capital works and asset management compared to what is required given the age and need of some of our infrastructure, which supports nearly all the services that we deliver as a city. I did just want to see and invite the Executive Director of Corporate and Community and Business Services to make a few comments on the financial statements, ratios, and the audit findings for the year. So I'll pass over to the Executive Director.
Yep. Thank you, David, and thank you to Mayor, councillors and community. So just very quickly, I'd just like to reiterate a couple of the comments that the CEO's just made. Looking back on the preparation of the financial year 21 budget, it took me a moment to remember that we were creating this budget in an incredibly uncertain environment. And it was unprecedented at the time. COVID had just hit. We were experiencing our first lockdown, and the last financial quarter for the previous financial year, we lost $3.8 million in that one quarter alone due to the lockdown effect. And so the city was severely impacted by the loss of commercial parking revenue, and also BD Park being closed down, and we're heavily sensitive to those two lines of revenue. So we didn't know what the future held. We were in the beginning of a new world, and so we planned for the worst and hoped for the best. And initially we set those two revenue lines that I just mentioned, parking and BD Park fees and charges, we set them at 50% of a normal operating year. And we estimated that we would potentially lose $10 million in revenue. And in response to that, we also undertook some very tough decisions in terms of expenditure. So we froze employee wages, we scaled back all unnecessary expenditure, we cut expenditure by about $6.8 million. And some of the expenditure that did remain was actually funded by special purpose grants. And we were able to actually deliver a balanced rate statement even despite those conditions. We were funding the community grants that David mentioned a moment before. I mentioned that it was from special purpose cash reserves such as Leadable Gardens Trust and our percent for art reserve. And we were able to also create a provision for financial hardship so that we could support the most vulnerable ratepayers in our community. All of our fees and charges were frozen. Commercial and community tenants received support from us through deferment and waivers of different fees and charges, and interest penalties for outstanding money was waived as well. Each quarter during the financial year, we progressively went through a quarter-on-quarter review of the budget, so to allow us to be a little bit agile while this new world was unfolding. And so each quarter we found that we had some surplus funds, and then we were able to progressively start to switch on community and infrastructure projects that we had currently put on hold. Despite lobbying from the local government sector, we also faced the challenge of the Valuer General undertaking the triennial revaluation of gross rental values of properties. Now, what that meant was that it actually created a very volatile impact on our ratepayers in terms of what their GRV ended up being compared to the previous year. And we took a position to reduce our total rates yield from the previous year by roughly $290,000. So year on year, we earned less from rates, but even in doing that, the flow through of the impact of the GRV revaluation meant that 30%, about 40% of ratepayers saw a decrease in their rates, 30% had about the same amount of rates, and then another 30% saw an increase. So it was a really difficult and challenging situation to respond to, and also to explain to ratepayers as to how this had occurred. And we certainly spent a lot of time trying to work out how we could ideally manage that. In the audited financial statements you have in front of you, you'll see that we, for the financial year in discussion, we delivered a deficit net result of $573,000 in the statement of comprehensive income. I've just set out for you the significant challenges that we faced. So we did that, and we still maintained all of the services to the community that we generally provided. We did manage to increase our capital works program to take advantage of federal government grants. And a major beneficiary of that, which David has already mentioned, was the Beatty Park indoor pool and indoor kids playground. We were able to secure some excellent funding, and we managed to deliver that as well. The audit itself, I'm happy to advise, it was an unqualified audit. The number of significant items have reduced from 7 in the previous year to 4 in the year in question. And we expect that to continue to improve because we're working on our financial processes and systems to enable that. And just finally, I would like to talk a little bit about financial ratios. The Department of Local Government and the financial regulations set out a series of ratios for local governments to apply to our financials. We understand there's a couple of the ratios that we have an adverse result on, so I'll just talk to those for a moment. One relates to asset sustainability and the other relates to operating surplus. So with regards to asset management sustainability, CEO just mentioned a moment ago that this relates to the maintenance and renewal of our assets. It's actually a challenge for many local governments. We're not alone in this. It's reflective of the fact that local governments need to manage so many assets on behalf of their community. And for the City of Vincent, we have about $475 million worth of assets under our management. And it's a range of assets extending from Leederville Oval and Beatty Park through to this hall, the roads and footpaths that you see, the drains, parks and street furniture. Our challenge, and the reason that we have an issue with this ratio, is that our challenge is to spend sufficient funds on renewing and maintaining that body of assets. And the way the ratio works is that we are encouraged to prune a tree, to replace a dead tree, but not to plant a new tree. So we describe that as renewing over new, renew over new. We aim for about 80 to 85% of our capital works budget to be focused on renewal and maintenance of existing assets, and then the remaining 15 to 20 will be on new assets. David mentioned we've commenced an in-depth conversation with our community about asset management sustainability, and there will be a lot further discussions as we improve our planning and management around that. And then finally, the operating surplus ratio, effectively that relates to money coming in and money going out, and that will improve as we continue to focus on operational efficiency and increasing our revenue. We've launched a number of operating efficiency initiatives, and the most significant in recent times is the waste management strategies. Collectively, they will be delivering $347,000 a year in savings from next year, and a 10-year net present value to the city of $2.35 million. We have a range of other operating efficiency programs that deliver benefits, from moving to electric vehicle fleet, adding solar panels to our facilities, having ranges on electric bikes, and planting water-wise gardens. We're not only caring for our environment, but running a more efficient business and driving our costs down. And we're not stopping there. We're continually focusing on efficiency programs, and you'll continue to hear more about that in the current year's budget. So in summary, we are definitely building a longer term plan for financial sustainability that's taking shape. We have a plan for how we're going to work through asset management sustainability ratio, and the efficiency programs we have in place will, over time, deliver an improvement to the operating surplus ratio. And more information in that and the forward plans will be available to the community in a lot more detail in the 10-year long-term financial plan that is currently being prepared and will be provided to the community for their input. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO and Executive Manager of Community and Business, David and Virginia. Much appreciated for the overview. I'm not going to repeat what's already been said, but I think there have been some really key themes that emerged during this reporting year. For me, those themes are really around COVID support and rebound, underpinned by some fantastic resilience in our community and our business communities. The objective of Council was to support, to provide advice, to ensure that all of the messaging around health and wellbeing was crystal clear as we supported the government in keeping our communities safe. We did a lot of relief during this time, and one of our programs, which was a little bit different, in addition to supporting the most vulnerable in our community, was our arts relief grant funding support, which I thought might be worth noting. We did receive an Institute of Public Administration award for, given that that was really directing support from a developer contribution reserve fund, which could be used for no other purpose than public art, and getting that out the door to artists who are very well impacted by COVID-19. And we've seen the fruits of that start to trickle through with art and in all its different forms as a result of that program. It was a huge one for us, as Virginia has outlined, in terms of our financial situation. There was so much budgeting. We were budgeting every quarter, and we were looking at not only our immediate financial situation, but we're also really conscious and looking at our future focused sustainability. And I think that really came through strongly in our key strategic directions. Probably the critical one there linked to finances was our asset sustainability strategy. And that really underpins the information that Virginia's provided around the renewal that we need to see in order to bring our ratios upwards. It's a work in progress, and we see pressures when you're maintaining significant regional facilities with complex needs like Beatty Park, a heritage listed reserve, a heritage listed asset on a A-class reserve. Significant issues, and as I think Virginia's outlined the dollar amount, but it's that we have 6 major regional and sporting facilities, 38 buildings, halls, pavilions and club rooms, 47 playgrounds, 106.4 hectares of parks and gardens, and hundreds of kilometres of roads and footpaths. So that was a a really important body of work to get out to our community and have that discussion about how we need to be financially sustainable for the future and continue to provide assets that our community want to use, feel proud to use and are comfortable using. Some other key strategic directions have already been outlined, but they do have impactful targets. So if we're talking about the health plan, we have a smoke-free town centres target, which we're hoping to meet this year. In our accessible city strategy, we have a target to achieve 40 kilometres across our local residential streets, which we're hoping to start bedding down as soon as possible. In our sustainable environment strategy, we have a zero emissions target by 2023 for our own emissions, and we're doing well with that, as we've heard about some of the decisions we've been making around our fleet and etc. I also just want to say that in everything that we do, we have really been focused not only on financial sustainability, but on environmental sustainability. That's a huge underpinning of the work that we do. And today, having met with residents about the importance of trees, we know that all of these things that make our environment sustainable, livable, are things that our community supports us in. So I'd also like to say thank you to everyone here tonight who are part of our community that supported us through what was a pretty challenging year for everybody. And along with our staff, our council was having weekly COVID meetings to ensure our decision making was as smooth as possible and that our governance was flexible and responsive to the situations that we were facing. So I would like to invite questions on the annual report. So does anybody have a question? Would you like to come forward to the microphone to ask it? Yes, thank you.
My name's Beth Johnson. I emailed you earlier over the last couple of days. I'm a resident of Mount Hawthorn, previously Leederville, been in the area for nearly 10 years. I just want to note, thank you for answering a number of the questions I sent through, Virginia. I do want to say, though, that these concerning adverse trends on the finances predate COVID. So we've seen this council approve budgets that are in deficit for 4 out of the last 5 years. And we've had the auditor note significant adverse trends on the operating surplus ratio for 3 years. So I don't think COVID can be blamed, and I absolutely note that the conditions this year made it particularly challenging. What I would like to know, and I acknowledge your response around the long-term financial plan, and I have read that plan, is it the council's plan, does the council intend to approve yet another budget in deficit in this upcoming financial year? I note that the one that was approved for the one that's been just reported on was $5.7 million in deficit. Is the council comfortable with that from a governance perspective? And if so, why? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Cole, thank you for the question. A short response, but it's a much more detailed discussion. Council will spend the next 5 months putting together the annual budget for next financial year. It's a long involved process which takes into account all the changes to the external environment, including the economic environment and changes in terms of the costs that we're dealing with and a rising cost environment. The city's intent is to be sustainable over the long term, which means making sensible short-term decisions which contribute to that financial sustainability over what should be a 10-year planning horizon. We have been improving over the last few years that planning horizon, particularly around the most discretionary aspect of that wasn't a prepared intervention from next door, I don't think. That includes ensuring that the city is managing our capital works program, and we've got a lot more visibility and control over the planning horizon for that, and that's available now to the community through the initiative that the city's taken to publish our 4-year capital works program, which shows every line item of every dollar spent on each of our assets and the key funding and maintenance programs over the next 4 years. And then we have some large scale commitments or potential commitments around some major assets, which include assets like Leederville Oval, Beatty Park, as the Mayor has mentioned, Litters Stadium, and a large number of our reserves have ageing infrastructure on them and will require a what I'd consider a potential reset to the way we balance both our expenditure to meet those commitments as well as the revenue side. The City of Vincent has a proud history and legacy of being essentially a low rating council compared to our market councils and certainly compared to councils in metropolitan Perth. So we've been historically been a very low rating and one of the lowest rating councils in a context over the last 5 or 10 years of increasing expectations and demands from the community and businesses in terms of the standard in which we maintain our facilities and the volume and quality of the services we provide as well. So there is a gap that you have identified when you've reviewed our financial situation, that the demands on what the community want us to spend does not match what we've been rating ratepayers essentially over the last 10 years, where we've been trying to maintain as low rates as possible, but with an increasing gap in our obligations for capital expenditure.
Just before you do, Murray, I might just add a little bit of extra to that. So just, I guess there's been a lot of work that's been going on in the background to try to ensure that we make the absolute best decisions when it comes to finances. So project management framework is something that is critical and has been a work in progress in terms of making sure that our projects are delivered on time and on budget. That's been incredibly challenging because some of the assets that we deal with, like Beatty Park, are complex, and this is outside of the reporting period, but we're now dealing with rising construction costs and the impact that that's having, even where we've had projects valued by a quantity surveyor. So we've got some complexities ahead. The asset sustainability strategy and implementation was really about having that very direct conversation with the community about where we're at, what our problems are in terms of our assets and how we deal with that. Is it through increased rating? Is it through rationalisation, co-sharing? These are the sorts of things that we have been trying to do in terms of bringing together groups to co-share buildings, to make the use of what we do have in the best way for the community. We have looked at our lease and licensing arrangements, so we now have a property management framework that has a fair playing field for all, which is about making sure that people understand as a community group or as a commercial tenant what it is that they need to be paying to the city. David mentioned the 4-year capital works program, and I think that's really important when you think about the state government that has forward estimates and is able to say to the community, we can't do that this year, but it's coming up in that 4-year cycle. We've costed that and that's sitting in the long-term financial plan. Interestingly, under the local government reforms proposed, local governments will be required to have a very clear rating strategy, which I think will be really beneficial. And it's something that the city had already really been wanting to talk about. Given that we are a low rating council, where is it that we should be sitting to support the types of assets and community services that we do need to provide in the City of Vincent? We are looking at the way we utilise our assets best. So, for example, at the December council meeting, again, out of the reporting period, but to give a bit of an indication of our future directions, we're looking at better utilising the city-owned Leederville car parks so that we ensure we've got provision of public car parking, that we look at alternate revenue streams for the City of Vincent, and that we engage with some really good future focused ideas for how to maximise the assets there that we do have, which are really valuable to our community. We have a lot of work going on in our major facilities. Beatty Park is the big one, and it is important to state that we are going it alone. We're running a regional facility that is currently seeing 1.2 million people through the door. We've had advocacy to state and federal government to provide some significant support to us on those facilities where, if you look at our indoor pool works, we're spending up to $5 million of city funding on that. And we're very conscious of the fact that when we're maintaining those major facilities without getting substantial grants through state and federal government, that then does have an impact on our community facilities, because that ties up a lot of our capital works budget. We have been fortunate to get a $3 million grant for Electors Stadium, which is helpful, and we continue to liaise and to advocate to our state and federal counterparts, regularly bringing people through Beatty Park, talking to them about the work that we're doing and the ideas that we have to make better utilisation of in particular, Beatty Park grandstand. So complex issues, but we are very conscious of the fact that we need to bring this all together and do better. And I think that some of the new systems and processes that have been established by administration are really setting us in the right direction. The long-term financial plan that we adopt this financial year will be quite critical in how we reflect that moving forward and how we start to grapple and show over the 10-year horizon that issue of things like the asset sustainability ratio being addressed, and making sure that those long-term findings are really being brought into control. It's tough, but we have a lot of belief that we can do that. The pressures are there every day to meet a diverse need in our community, and that's local government life, which we embrace and cherish, but it's not without its complexities. Murray, you had a question?
What it is that I'm just asking how far council's prepared to go to look after the vulnerable. How far the council is prepared to go to look after the vulnerable in our community? That was the question.
Murray, could you provide a bit more parameters around that? Because it's a difficult question to answer, because that could extend to things like aged care.
No, not aged care.
Could you just provide a bit more context?
It's in the motion, so I've just brought it up now. It's something that will come up in my motion, because I'd like a bit more protection for my not getting hit by other cars in my back lane. That's my question.
I see. From a road safety perspective. Okay.
That's all that is. That's
all right. Thanks, Murray. Are there any other questions on the annual report? If you'd like to comment on, I'll ask for a mover and seconder. So if you'd like to speak to it, I'll do that shortly. Just checking if there's any further questions. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel that the question has been answered in that. Does the council intend to approve another budget? I just don't understand that this is going to be a 5-year thing of 5 budgets. So I'm concerned about sustainability. I'm noting that there's pressures, and I understand that, but is that the council's intention? Or is it like maybe aiming for a regular budget surplus?
Through you, Nicole, the approach would be to deliver a balanced budget position over the medium to long term, and that would allow council in any particular year to decide if there's a particular pressing need to go into a small deficit. We wouldn't want it to be a large deficit, or to deliver a small surplus, but we are aiming to provide a balanced budget position over the medium to long term. That can result in year-to-year fluctuations, but it wouldn't be sustainable to run year-on-year deficits.
So I know in the long-term financial plan, versus the years of it are anticipating deficits, 7-year deficits. Is that a medium to long-term balance budget for
Through you, Nicole, what when we put together the 10-year long-term financial plan, we're essentially looking at each decision we make and then the plans we put into those out years, that we finish that 10-year period in a balanced position, that the revenues that we're projecting meet our projected expenditure.
Okay, I look forward to receiving the update.
Thank you. Are there any further questions before I call for a mover and seconder to adopt the annual report? All right, there being no further questions, I'd ask for an elector to move that we adopt the annual report. Please call for a mover. Everyone's prepared to move it? Oh, thank you. Ashley Wallace is moving. Is there a seconder? Susan Gondaszewski, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it? Susan, no? Okay, I'll open the floor to comments on the annual report.
Thank you, Dudley Meyer from Highgate. I was going to go and make some comments about the report, but given the number of people here, I'll just be very, very brief. Firstly, I'll point out the fact that you go to the Vincent web page, click on annual report, you get last year's annual report. So some people may not have seen this year's annual report. The CEO mentioned the commercial waste and the fact that it's no longer picked up, and that we have much tidier streetscapes. That comes at a cost. I've got a flower deli at the end of my street. They used to have recycled bins and normal bins. Now they have one skip. All their green waste, which is considerable, all their recycling, cardboard, and their crap goes into the one skip. It doesn't go to, it goes to landfill. And I won't mention that. Let's talk about the refurbishment of Beatty Park. What wasn't mentioned that there was a project, had a budget of 2.2 million and a spend of 3.4 million. And the report says, we learned some important lessons from that. What concerns me, that it was at the cost of the community. And I don't understand how this wasn't picked up earlier. I'm not going to mention the name of the project sponsors who are here, or the accountable managers, but that's pretty bad. There was mention about the 3 million grant for lettuce. The city didn't get that grant, the football club did. In terms of the questions about financials, this year's capital program was 22 million. At the end of December, halfway through, they've spent 6 million. Every year, they put a lot more budget for capital, but don't spend it. I think last year, it was about 700,000, something like that, of ratepayers' money that was obtained, but wasn't needed. It went back to reserves and things like that. I won't go any more, but I just ask a favour. When we get to general business, could Andrew Mayne speak first? Here's his daughter here and needs to get her home, and he would like to speak first. Thank you.
Just in response to that, Dudley, the Beatty Park indoor pool project will be the subject of internal audit at my request, and I also raised a similar issue to you on capital works expenditure at the council briefing last night. So we are aware and we are following those issues very closely. Would anyone else wish to speak on the annual report? Yes, come forward, please. Sorry, I was wearing my mask then. Perhaps we could just move the microphone so that when people are speaking, they're addressing the audience. Is that possible? Turn them off. We'll just check in with you as we go to see if there's an improvement. But as I say, it is the first time we've done this, so please do let us know if you're having troubles and we'll try to correct it as we go.
Testing. Yep. Can you hear me now? Just speak into the mic.
Are there any other comments in relation to the annual report? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour to adopt the annual report? I'll have to vote if it's going to be adopted. All those against? Just noting two electors, 3 electors voting against. I declare that carried. Thank you. Now we move to general business, and I would like to just give you a bit of an overview of how that will work. So as you can see, we have the microphone. We just ask that you come forward and you can put forward a motion. We ask that you read out your motion so that everybody is aware of what that is. I'll then call for a seconder. It does require a seconder for the motion to be debated. Otherwise, it can't be debated. So if we call for a seconder and it's something that you would like to support, please do put your hand up. And when coming to the meeting, to the microphone, if you could simply say your name, the suburb in which you reside, and then outline your motion, that would be much appreciated. The mover of the motion does have a right of reply, and that will close debate. So if you wish to speak before you see the mover come back up to the microphone, please do raise your hand. And each elector has 1 vote, and an elector does not have to vote, and voting is determined by a show of hands, and a simple majority carries the vote. So without any further ado, I would like to call forward Andrew Mayne first, who would like to be able to leave the meeting more quickly.
Thanks very much, Dudley, for, can I take my mask off or do I, yeah.
Yes, sorry, I did mean to say when you're speaking, you're very free to take your masks off.
Just a point of clarification there. I have 3 motions and I'm conscious of not wanting to take up too much time for the other residents here. But is it possible to table 2 of the motions and not read them out or anything, and not talk to them and just really read one out and talk a little bit about that one? I'm not sure what or do I have to read the whole motions?
Well, if you do require, try this one, is that better?
You might even need to put the microphone.
You do require a seconder for the motion.
Okay.
So I can't see how that would work.
All right. Well, I'll get cracking then. So I'll read out my motion. Is that how it works? Yeah. Okay. So motion 1 is footpath safety and usability. And my motion has around 7 elements. Number 1, that the city urgently complete an assessment of the condition of footpaths in the district to determine locations where they are in poor condition and unsafe for people of all ages and abilities to walk, run and ride on. This includes footpaths that are cracked, where there is vertical and physical displacement, unsafe curb ramps, particularly where the ramps meet the road surface, etc. That this assessment include identification of locations that have previously been brought to the attention of the city by residents, an additional request to residents to provide examples of unsafe and damaged footpaths in the city, and proactive inspection by the city officers. That the city prepare a schedule to repair these footpaths based on user numbers and type and proximity to schools, shops, parks, community facilities. That the city determine an innovative solution to the common situation where footpaths adjacent to building sites are covered in debris or damaged for the months or years it takes for the demolition and construction process to occur. That this solution to recognise that footpaths are a vital component of transport infrastructure for people of all ages and abilities to walk, ride bikes and scooters, use wheelchairs and other mobility devices. That the city proactively and regularly ensure the street trees and vegetation from private properties do not encroach on footpaths. This should include regular visual inspection by the city officers and be based on reports made by residents and previous instances where obstruction of vegetation has been raised. That on a daily basis, the city proactively monitor the streets of the district to take action where people have illegally parked their vehicles so as to obstruct people from using the footpath. This should include a roster for rangers to visit locations where breaches have recently occurred or been reported. That the city introduce a system that embraces current technology to make it easier for people to report instances of illegal parking. For example, using social media, Snap, Send, Solve, etc. The current process of having to contact the city to report instances of illegal parking by telephone is outdated and can be impractical or overly time consuming, particularly when you're doing after hours reports or you're in a rush. So that's the elements of that motion.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I call for a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Linda.
Okay.
Do you wish to speak to the motion,
I don't
Andrew?
think I need to speak. It's fairly.
Okay, well.
I'll just make a couple of points. Sorry, Mayor. Just recent, I use the footpaths on a daily basis, running, walking, riding. Obviously, everybody here would use them. I've had a couple of interesting instances recently. I badly sprained an ankle when I had to run on the road to go past a car that was parked across the footpath. And then coming back onto the footpath, I twisted the ankle. It's about 2 months ago and I'm still feeling effects from that. I've also been verbally abused and chased and grabbed by a person when I politely asked them to not park their car on the footpath as I was running past their parked car. So it's a big issue, apart from those selfish, things that have happened to me. I think the importance of footpaths for people to get around the city is pretty obvious, and I think we need to take it seriously.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll just see if there are any other speakers to this motion. So I'm not quite sure why that's happening.
A lot. Everything I read was the motion.
Narelle O'Neill, Mount Hawthorn. Can I add to that? I also use footpaths on a daily basis where laneways meet the footpath. I've been nearly hit on so many occasions. We've got the council encouraging infill, but not accommodating the laneways that are being used to exit and leave the landfill, and they're really dangerous. They need more humps where they meet the footpath. So thank you.
Thank you, Narelle. Are there any further speakers on this motion? Murray, would you like to come forward, please?
Actually, Andrew's statements cover some of what I've got in my two motions, but the second motion I was going to put is the one about trees in Tar Street and how also the funding.
Sorry, Murray, we're still dealing with Andrew's motion at the moment.
What I'm saying,
you're speaking
what Andrew's done is brought forward my motion. So I'll speak to that later in that case.
Okay.
Okay.
You don't wish to comment on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Murray. Are there any further comments in relation to this item? Look, the CEO has just pointed out to me that we are increasing expenditure on our footpath upgrade and renewal program over our capital works, 4-year capital works program. So we are looking to increase that. We know that you've been a great advocate on this issue, Andrew, and I think that some increased expenditure will help realise what it is that you're seeking.
Thank you. So has that been passed?
Apologies, I should have seamlessly moved to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please vote. Thank you. All those against? I declare the motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, my motion 2 is about street trees, and the motion has 11 parts. And that the city recognise that the current approach to selecting species to plant, to choose species as street trees is not yielding acceptable outcomes, as too many exotic tree species are selected and planted. That the city acknowledge that compared to the common exotic species used, native tree species provide more food for native bird species, including the endangered Carnaby's black cockatoo. That the city acknowledge that most Australian native tree species are beautiful and have stunning displays of flowers. That the city acknowledge that the UV index in Perth is only below the level of 3, which is the level where you don't need to have any protection, in June. For all other days in the year, the UV index reaches a level where it's recommended some protection is applied. That the city recognise that native tree species provide more year-round shade than exotic species. Not only is this important for the safety and convenience of users, it will reduce the urban heat island effect. That the city acknowledge that the claimed benefit that exotic tree species provide light penetration and warmth during the winter months has minimal impact, given that during winter there is often cloud cover, and in any case, any benefit would only affect dwellings on the south side of east-west orientated streets. That the city acknowledge that jacaranda trees lose their leaves in late winter and do not regain them until December. As such, any benefit from light penetration and warmth is not relevant. That the city acknowledges that deciduous trees planted in some of the town centres result in grey, dull and bleak streetscapes during the winter months when they are without leaves. Fitzgerald Street's a good example. And that the all year round vegetation and winter flowering of many native tree species brings colour and vibrancy to streets during this time of the year. Point 9, that the city move away from the use of the street tree selection tool. In its place, that it develop a plan in consultation with residents to identify suitable street trees for each street in the district. This is similar to the best practice approach in other governments in Perth. 10, if the city does not agree with this proposal, that it make the tree selection tool available for public inspection so that the inputs and assumptions in the model can be viewed by residents. And 11, that the city have a goal that at least 75% of street trees planted from this year onwards are Australian native tree species.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I call for a seconder for the motion, please? Seconded by Narelle. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Andrew?
Just a few points. Look, I know that not everybody will be in favour of this motion. I know there are people in the gallery that do like non-native trees, but I just wanted to, I suppose, put forward my view and see what the community think. Can I talk still or no?
And what do you want? Yeah, you have to listen to the 11 points.
So Andrew, sorry, have you finished addressing your motion?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go to the seconder. Do you wish to speak to the motion as the seconder? Thank you. Is there any further comments from electors on this motion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried.
Thank you. And last one, and it's a bit quicker. It's about community consultation. Point 1, that the city acknowledge that for residents to provide accurate, valuable and considered feedback to the city on an initiative or project is seeking comment on, that the information that they are provided by the city is comprehensive and accurate. Point 2, that the city acknowledge that any surveys used to gather feedback from residents are structured so that they are unbiased and that answers provided cannot be misconstrued. That the city acknowledge that the assessment and analysis of community feedback should be carried out by officers in a fair and impartial manner and accurately represent the views expressed by those providing feedback. That the city acknowledge that the feedback from resident consultation is an essential component in the decision-making process and is essential to good governance. And lastly, to ensure that residents have faith in the integrity of the consultation process, it is requested that the process used by the city to seek and analyse feedback from the community is assessed by a suitably qualified independent and impartial organisation. This could be the Ombudsman or the Office of Auditor General.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Seconded by Dudley.
Just in talking to this, there's been, I suppose, two significant issues that have come to my attention and are of interest to me, where the consultation that the city carried out sort of led to some questions about how the information was initially provided to residents to make their submission, and then how the comments and feedback provided by the community was then analysed and assessed by officers. The first one is the North Perth Roundabouts issue. So, as was publicly presented in the Voice newspaper, when the consultation took place, the officers' report indicated that there was a 50-50 split between support and opposition to the roundabouts in North Perth. A number of people had a look at the submissions that were actually made and came up with a different figure, in that approximately 2/3 of people were actually 2/3 or 3/4 of people were opposed to the project rather than in support. In addition to this, the officers decided to have two sort of areas where they presented feedback from the community. One was the complete responses for all responses received, and then there was another assessment made on people that were deemed to be within the affected area. Now, that affected area went up as far as the corner of Walcott and Fitzgerald Street, so a fair way up. However, I live on Alfonso Street. I ride through that area on a daily basis or walk, and I wasn't considered to be in that area, which I found perplexing, given that it was a lot closer than the corner of Walcott and Fitzgerald Street. In addition to the way the feedback was assessed, the information that went to residents to provide them with information about the project was incomplete, and it had inaccuracies. For example, it said that the project was going to be funded by the Road Safety Commission, which wasn't the case. It also did have a pros and cons. It just said these are the benefits of this project from the perspective of the officers that had already decided that they wanted to do it. So I think there needs to be balance when you are presenting something to the community, and not just here are the great things and this is why you should support it. You've also got to put pros and cons, as we have for when there's referendums held. And the other big issue, I suppose, with regards to consultation was the Hyde Park kiosk, and I wasn't deeply involved in that, but I observed that and again saw that there was a lot of controversy about how the consultation and feedback was submitted. The feedback submitted, how that was assessed and counted, with the council saying that there were people in support of it, the kiosk being constructed, but others saying that the actual figures said that there was greater support for the kiosks, the food vans to stay. So I just think for the council to get its process assessed by a third party, independent third party with expertise in this area might just give people a lot more confidence, and maybe assist the council in ensuring that it's doing things in the best way possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Dudley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do have a lot of concerns about consultation, and I know that the council has been working for at least 2 years on improving and developed a new policy which they adopted in December. And in that policy, they talked about 4 levels of engagement: you inform, you consult, you involve, or you collaborate. Now, recently, so after that policy was adopted, recently the council went out to the community and went around Monmouth Street with a questionnaire. Questionnaire had, I think, 3 questions. One of them was, do you work, do you live, or do you own property in North Perth? So people, you can only pick one. So people were flummoxed a bit because they own property and lived in the area. The other thing was the park isn't actually in North Perth, Mount Hawley. No one picked that up. They didn't get an opportunity to be engaged and say, this is what we want. They just, do you have any comments? Now, the people who've experienced council before know that that's your opportunity to make comments, but most of the people don't. They don't realise that's their chance to engage. And I think, given the fact that it's probably one of the first times you've engaged with the community, it was done so poorly. There are other examples too. There was the Barley Street car park. where a businessman collected signatures, the 300 signatures, but the staff counted it as one. It was only because Councillor Gondashevsky lives in the area and realised that the information that the staff were presenting to the council was wrong and that the car park was used a lot. And that really what those business people were saying was correct. And as a result, the car park's still there, but it just disappointed me. The information that they collected wasn't fed back properly. And there's other examples that recently, the Litters Stadium, I saw the recording and I saw Councillor Alexander ask about the expenditure of $72,000 on public art. And the responsible manager said, oh, well, when I went out to the community, we got strong feedback about community art. So I went and looked at the responses and credit to the council, we now put the verbatim responses. There was not a single comment about community art. There was a question about a mural on the club rooms, which is a separate project. But what was happening there was community feedback and the information coming back to councillors wasn't the same. Hyde Park has already been mentioned. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to improve and actually engage people and find out what they really want to see. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers on the motion? Okay, thank you all for your comments. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I understand there were your three motions. It would be fantastic if you could provide those to Wendy. So I'll call forward the next speaker to present their motion. Any order, whoever would like to come first. Come forward, Mari.
Okay, Mari's Slight, 89 Carr Street, West Perth. I've just got two, you can call them small motions, but one's been going on for a couple of years or longer, and that's Colvin Lane, which runs into Strathcona Street, which has now become a raceway, even getting into Strathcona Street. But council has told me they've done all they can do for us, and they've put humps in the laneway. They have at the entrance to the laneway on the wrong side so people can't see it, an 8-kilometre speed limit, but they can't see it because it's on the left side, and the people when they're driving the car, they're driving the right-hand side drives, so they don't see that. And then coming out into
I'm very sorry. Just before you get into the context, do you have a form of words to say what it is that you're seeking to put forward?
I do have a motion.
Yeah, if you could read out your motion first, and then I'll call for a seconder, and then if you will then go to the context.
It goes on a bit long, but
that's okay. Go ahead.
Fine. All right. Thanks. Okay, so I have to type that. Colvin help for Colvin Lane is needed. It's not just protection I'm seeking for myself, but for my health, but as well as for the next door neighbours and for all the users of Colvin Lane who drive daily up and down this 5-metre wide laneway. I understand that if my car does get hit by one of these drivers, because Colvin Lane is now classified as a public laneway, originally it was a private laneway, I would have to prove that the accident was not my fault and that the matter to prove this could end up in court. All because I attempted to drive safely out of my home garage in my car to get onto the local Strathcona Street. The majority of vehicles, including huge trucks now, which use this lane as attendees of the West Run training facility, which adjoins the end of Colvin Lane. My daily fear for me when I drive it every time now, when I wish to use my car, is that I could be hit by a speeding vehicle. The maximum speed council has checked is 25 kilometres an hour, but I'm sure it's faster than that sometimes, in an 8-kilometre laneway. And they even go over the humps at that speed. They're in a hurry to get out and then to get into the laneway as well when they're coming in. And it's not a two laneway, it's a single laneway. So they come from either direction, of course. Precious few drivers observe the 8-kilometre speed limit. The majority tend to speed up just outside my garage door. But of course, I drive slowly forward to turn into the laneway, and after tooting twice, and then I come forward, sometimes they don't even hear that. They try and get past me, but they don't. Whew, that's tricky. It's not good for my heart, to be quite honest. At any rate, so I haven't been hit yet, but the council seemed to, so I did say to me at one stage, council told me at one stage, well, I haven't been hit, you haven't been hit yet, inferring that I have to be hit before any further protection measures will be taken by council. For those who don't know Colvin Mayne, it is a 5 metre wide for the owners of the 3 garages on Colvin Mayne. That's the only narrow section of the laneway, and that's where we happen to live, between Strathcona Street and the Mayne laneway, which runs into Colvin Mayne a little bit further up. Beyond this point, after the laneway is wider, the laneway is then wider for the remainder of the houses on Carr Street, whose garage is back onto Colvin Mayne. I moved onto my property in 2000, and in those days there were very few cars using this lane, and for which those people were at that stage considerate to other Colvin Mayne users, including users of the garages at the rear, which is where we are, at the rear of 91, 89 and 87 on 89. As council is now well aware, because we've been to this backwards and forwards about this issue, since that time, the number of vehicles using this lane, including huge trucks, has increased dramatically, sometimes at least 60 or 70 vehicles a day. And even some of those don't even go to the West One College. They go as a shortcut route to get through from Charles Street, vice versa, back into Strathcona Street, whatever.
Sorry to interrupt. You're giving us a lot of the good history here, but do you have a form of words to tell us what it is that you...
Well, my motion will be a suggestion at the end, which is that other 2 lines away.
But if we can bring that forward, and then it's normal for you to then provide the context as part of your debate.
I'd just like to say a few words to that too. So the last time I asked council for further help about this, I was told that it's unfortunate that I live where I live. And that didn't make me feel very good. So I felt I wasn't welcome living in my city of Vincent. I do believe that council can still find a way to deal with this speeding threat. And so I've worked out a few words that may be something I could do, and that is the motion that I'm asking, and that is suggestion. So nothing else seems to help. They won't slow down. But if perhaps council could say, please respect do like the big large board at either end of the laneway, or at the Strathcona Street entrance, of course, both sides of the sign, and say, please respect the people who live here and whose garages are on Colvin Mayne by observing the 8 kilometre speed limit. Have one sign at Strathcona Street end and the other halfway up the lane. That's my request. That's that motion.
So just to summarise, the motion is to add signage on Colvin Lane at the Strathcona Street end and halfway down, to request that people abide by the 8 kilometre an hour speed limit. Would that be a fair summary?
Well, just asking them to show respect, because they don't. They're in a hurry to get them out. That's the point.
Thank you, Mary.
I can't see another way of getting around it. It's just my last attempt before I get knocked off.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
So that's the motion.
Seconded by Narelle. You have given us a lot of background. Do you still wish to speak further to your motion, Murray?
Oh, I pretty well said what I was going to say about it.
Okay, all right.
My last attempt in 2000 didn't get anywhere because I was told I shouldn't. It's unfortunate I live where I live. Yeah.
I do apologise for those comments. You shouldn't receive comments like that. Would you like to speak to the motion, Narelle? Are there any other people that wish to speak to the motion?
I don't know the name.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Thanks.
All those against? I declare the motion carried.
Okay,
Murray, do you have a second motion?
I do have a second motion.
On this occasion, could you read out the words of the motion, and then once I get a seconder, if you could then give the background?
I see. Okay. All right. This one. Sorry. Okay. I haven't put the wording in the motion as I did the other one, unfortunately, but it's really asking the council to take, the motion will be that asking the council to take action on the height of the trees in Carr Street is exceptional, and our power lines are too close to these trees. So as a consequence, we're asking that council cut back the top of these trees, which are going to heaven at the moment, and to prevent fires when they hit the actual power lines when storms and or cyclones come, because that's also getting more likely to happen now more often. That's the motion.
Thank you, Murray. Just to clarify, what street did you refer to?
This is
there?
Carr Street.
On Carr Street.
Yes,
okay.
on Carr Street.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Okay, the information
I'll just get a seconder, seconded by Ross Iopolo. Go ahead, Murray.
Okay, the first one is we adjoining owners of 91, 89 and 87 Carr Street, West Perth, are seeking council's action to prevent some serious damage to each of our properties situated on Carr Street, West Perth. The height of three of the trees, one's a jacaranda, the other two are box trees, which have been there for a long, long time, are on the verges in front of our houses and are continuing to get higher and higher. We have asked council multiple times to cut these height of these trees back, but it hasn't happened. And so I understand with Western Power, 2.5 metres is the distance, minimum distance between trees and power lines. Council's mention has been, we've drawn council's attention to this on several occasions, but because when the wind isn't blowing, they're not that close, no action has been taken. So, but recent weather warnings have predicted there is likelihood of cyclones and more storms in the future. Our concern is for each time as cyclonic or super strong wind event storms come along, that the high branches of these trees hit the power lines so close to our homes that this could cause not only lengthy power outages to our homes, but also fires. That was the main thing of it. And then our next door neighbour has written a much more detailed one, which is part of our request to council.
Sorry, Murray, is that a fresh motion?
It'll be the same, it's part of the same motion,
part of
but
the same motion.
it gives more detail and it helps council
Okay.
in what we're suggesting. So he's mentioned some of the trees mentioned are getting extremely high and will require attention. They are close to the power lines and in the intense storm likely to break branches and come onto the power lines to our homes. Also, the branches hang down so low in some places and are at risk of striking a passerby in the eye. I have several occasions cut back the trees he had to himself for that reason, only to be left with the branches and debris to be removed at my own expense. Also, a hard pointed nut drops from one of the trees on the footpath and builds up on the path, which is sharp when people don't have shoes on, it's quite painful. Therefore, cutting the trees back is a safe and reasonable size, would slow the amount of the nuts and also allow stop the above problems, alleviate them, as well as making the street much more desirable. Already council has cut back part of this major tree, which has been a problem with that, but it's only hacked one side of it and hasn't cut the top off. So, and I've watched myself in storms when wind is blowing, it blows right barely that close to the power lines. Oh, this is scary. So as the tree gets larger, the roots become more evasive and cause damage to the footpaths. The roots raise the footpath and then the footpath must be ground down flat to avoid trip hazard. This was done recently by council on two of the jacaranda trees, which have only been there about 10 years maximum. And also some of the roots now going under our fences, which can also damage ratepayers' fences. And I think these trees, if they're kept cropped and shaped, it would also slow down the growth of the roots, which can cause the damage. An example of this could be the tree outside 91 Carr Street. That's what I've just mentioned that he said that's been cut back because of people complaining too when they walked under it. The trees should have been shaped and trimmed back instead of harshly cut recently. Okay, that's about all. So he hopes he's explained enough so he can understand by pruning of these trees will make it much more safer for everybody. And I think that applies to the rest of the trees going up that side of Carr Street just quietly. Yeah, so that's the end of it.
Thank you, Murray. Ross has seconded. You wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, as a resident, I totally agree that, it's safety is a real big issue for all residents. And, I've had my own safety issues that I've addressed with previous councils. So I was happy to second the motion so that residents have a chance to speak to it in this once in a year forum. So I was glad to do that. The other thing I'll say that just in case people in the audience aren't aware, when that motion or any motion comes to vote today, it doesn't mean it's being passed. It just means that it has to be presented to council for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers on the motion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. I call forward the next speaker with the motion, please.
Yeah, my motion is I'd like to move that the reconstituted limestone wall and fencing on the north side of Beatty Park Reserve be extended east towards Charles Street and connect to the existing garden wall structure. And I also move that the affected residents be involved in the preliminary planning and discussions to extend the wall and fencing. So this is about flooding, ongoing flooding.
Ray, just before you go on, if you wouldn't mind stating your name, just for the record, your name, the suburb in which you reside, and then before you go to the debate, I'll just call for a seconder for the motion.
So it's Ray Stevenson from 11 Emerson Street, North Perth.
Thank you, Ray. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Suzanne. You can go on, please, Ray.
So this is about flooding into our properties in Emerson Street from Beatty Park Reserve, which is obviously a City of Vincent owned property. So I'll just start by saying the City of Vincent Sustainable Environment Strategy 2019 to 2024 from the CEO, and I quote, locally we are seeing a drying climate with declining rainfall accompanied by increasing severity of heat waves and damaging storm events. As is accepted, climate change is leading to more frequent extreme weather events and storms. The City of Vincent should have this as a priority and should be protecting vulnerable residential properties. In 2013, after the completion of the extension of Beatty Park Aquatic Centre, there was massive flooding when it rained because of water cascading from the Beatty Park Aquatic Centre car park, and also lids being blown off pits at the rear of our houses, and bulk water was pouring out, overflowing into the car park and into our houses. It can only be assumed that the storm water from the large new roof area was not being contained on site as per building regulations, but was connected to the pipework that fed to the Claysbrook main drain, which under pressure was blowing quite substantial concrete lids off. Also, we make the point that council bylaws say that any water caused by rainwater has to be contained on the property, the owner's property. The same with anyone who wants to build a property or extend in Vincent retains the stormwater on their property. Also, therefore, waters that you can see from the video, I've sent videos to, you've probably seen them today and pictures, I've sent them before, which are quite enlightening. Coming from Beatty Park Reserve, a City of Vincent property, these waters are flooding our properties, and the City of Vincent has to contain this water on their property. Full stop. It's coming from your property into our property. There was $150,000 passed through council en bloc after a $25,000 consultant's report recommended this expenditure. So the residents, Steve's a builder and myself, I'm a facilities manager engineer, spent much time with this consultant coming back from work, had meetings up in the City of Vincent with Rick Losnica, then Kosovo, and that went through council en bloc. So we all thought this solution, that was fine, that was it. We'd done all the work. The emerged consultant's report in 2017 recommended, amongst other things, that a catchment garden area opposite Beatty Park Reserve car park to contain excess water. This was to act as a water sump. That's just one of the recommendations. As stated in the emerged consultants report of 2017, that the Claysbrook main drain is over capacity for most of the drain. And this is quote, meaning it will not flow when it is full, it's stagnant. We have witnessed this ourselves, that the water stagnates and the drains do not take the storm water away from the rear of our houses, and this will become more prevalent. This is why we are requesting an extension to the existing reconstituted limestone wall and fence, and also for the wall to be raised another half course. The original wall and fence cost $18,000. This is the most economical, sensible, long-term solution, which will slow down water and water flow and give the Claysbrook main drain a chance to start flowing again. And that's by far the cheapest option. It's our option. On I'll just go here. On the 6th of August 2019, I emailed the City of Vincent to say in the 2016-17 budget and the 2017-18 budget, there was $150,000 to carry out the emergent consultant's recommendations. So we thought, as it would be carried over, and it was for 2 years, but we just saw no action on our complaints. My words in this email were, can someone please answer us what has happened to the consultant's drainage solution, which was allocated $150,000 and we were not being consulted. This is for 2 years, mind you. I then got a reply from Andrew Murphy that there was a $30,000 contingency held over, and so far this winter, so listen to this, so far this winter, this is 2019, so far in this winter of 2019, we have not noticed any flooding. And we observed that there was no flooding. Well, we live there, we were being flooded. Who was the observer? I mean, honestly. So that money was taken away, spent somewhere else, obviously, to plug a hole or something. After 2 years, and all the work we'd done with the consultants and all the hopes we had built up, and the $25,000 that was spent by the City of Vincent on the consultant went out the window, and no solution has been done. And you wonder why we get shitty or angry, sorry.
Ray, just to give you an update with motions, we do, the annual general meeting allows for 5 minutes per speaker. You have been speaking for about 6.5. So
6.5 minutes?
Yes. If you would be so kind as to wrap up your statements, then I can move to the seconder. You will have the opportunity to speak at the conclusion of the motion as the mover.
So Andrew Murphy goes on to say that I understand that you still have concerns about water collecting within the paved area of your property. But our observations, so it's our observations again, have indicated that this water is not overflowing from the car park. It is mostly rained from your roof, that's my roof, structures and paved area, your paved areas. So we're getting flooded through our properties, but it's coming from my roof. That's quote, the emails are here. A large lawn area, I've got one page, a large lawn area was replaced with an eco garden on Charles Street, where you have wood chip to the south, but to the north is a large area of gravel. Refer to the video, which has created a hard surface runoff, which residents did complain about at the time. On the 8th of October 2021, I received, after complaining about the flooding situation from the CEO, David McLennan, we monitored the drainage around Beatty Park Reserve throughout winter. In our view, the drainage around Beatty Park Reserve worked as expected, but we're getting flooded. Videos, top photos, many. So when you make the statement, can you inform me, monitored, was it monitored through the night as we were up many times clearing the debris off drain grates so the stormwater would flow? And was it being monitored on weekends? Well, who, can I ask now, who, you made the statement, who was monitoring it?
Through you, Mayor Cole, our manager of engineering lives very close by to Biddy Park and visits there on a very regular basis and often walks across Biddy Park. So Ray, our manager of engineering, is a very close by resident of Biddy Park, so he monitors the area very closely.
Ray, just for the flow of the AGM, can I just ask that we're going to the
Well, I'll
second
just
vote?
finish now.
Okay.
In part, I can advise that this is from David McClellan. In part, I can advise there are no further works planned or budgeted for Beatty Park Reserve drainage for the next 4 years in our capital works program. And we do not agree further it is required as we're getting flooded. $150,000 taken off us. In forming this position, I have considered the correspondence and requests you have regarding this matter. Finally, the volume and frequency of our correspondence has diverted a substantial and reasonable amount of time of the city's resources away from our other functions. The city will not be responding to any further correspondence on these issues. The reason I send so many emails is because lack of response, half answers, not answering the questions, platitudes and false statements. Now, you've based everything on being monitored from a person that lives across the other side in Toorak Rise. How many times would he come past and how many times would he be there through the night when we've been out there at 2 a.m. in the morning? That is one of the most ridiculous statements I've heard.
Thank you,
in my
Ray.
life.
Thank you very much. I'll go to the seconder now, Suzanne.
Suzanne Burke, Emerson Street, North Perth, just speaking on Ray's motion. I do have a bit to get through and there will be a little bit of duplication from what Ray said, but I'm hoping I'll frame it in a fairly coherent manner. Our home is located at the rear of Beatty Park Reserve. We've lived there for over 20 years. We've raised our family here. Our home is our primary family asset. During the big storm in March 2010, we copped it big time. Both Ray's home and our home got severely flooded. The car park behind us turned into a lake. The volume of water against our roller door caused it to buckle under the weight. Water surged through the roller door and our white picket back gate. The water severely ingressed inside our homes at the rear. Water flowed down the side out to the front. Wood chips from the park blocked the gaps in the pickets on our front gate, and our front yard ended up being completely submerged underwater that was waist deep, this high, full of water. It's unbelievable. It was an extraordinary experience requiring a large cleanup and a considerable insurance claim. Since this event, the City of Vincent have put in place a number of measures to prevent this happening again. Due to constraints of time, I won't list all of these here. Notably, a commitment was made to stop using wood chips at the park, and significant areas of wood chips were converted to grass. However, the problem we still have is that measures put in place so far are not quite enough. Ongoing flooding events have taken place on and off over the years. The City of Vincent agreed more work was required and money was approved through council to complete further works. This money has disappeared and we've been told by the CEO that we'll not look at this again for at least 4 more years. Furthermore, the CEO has instructed all City of Vincent employees they are no longer to talk to us or to reply to our emails. Extraordinary leadership. A recent request for a copy of the surveyor's report completed in 2021 was met with a hard no. We've been left dumbfounded at how this has been handled. In 2017, the City of Vincent commissioned a hydraulic report to model water flow at the park. Despite asking for a copy of this, we only received a copy in 2021. And this was quite revealing. This report modelled the changes required to mitigate the flooding and made a number of key findings and recommendations, which included the mitigation measures put in place have reduced the frequency of flooding, but have not eliminated the risk. So this report was done by hydraulic engineers, not just this is what we think is happening. It's people qualified to assess the situation. The existing leisure centre drainage was found to be at overcapacity during major rain events, and it was found not all of the water at the leisure centre is retained and runoff is putting additional pressure on the drainage lines. The existing low-rise limestone wall in place is not adequate and runoff can go over the top or around the wall during a major event, which we've witnessed on several occasions. Extension of the limestone wall and slightly increasing height will quite simply eliminate the flooding problem, and that's all we're asking for. The Claysbrook main drain it's known to be performing over its capacity and backflow as possible. And finally, runoff occurs from the intersection of Charles Street and along Charles Street, which has minimal drainage in place. This is something that has been consistently denied by City of Vincent administration, despite it being in the report. After this report in 2017, we were told that the wall would be built. In the 2017-2018 budget, 150K was allocated for drainage. However, none was spent. A comment alongside this in the budget states, project deferred pending works to the pavilion. Budget will be carried forward to 2018-2019. This is the last we heard on the matter for some time. We've since discovered that in the 2019-2020 budget, the comment states, works not required. Residents were not informed. Since then, the pavilion has been demolished, no wall. An eco garden was put in place of the pavilion. To our horror, along came the truckloads of wood chips. We protested and reminded the City of Vincent the wood chips blocked the drains and these were replaced with gravel. In 2021 came the eco garden along the east side of the park along Charles Street. Again came the wood chips. Well, what a kerfuffle, and some of the councillors who were involved at the time will remember. To cut a long story short, the compromise reached was half the garden would be gravel and half wood chips. Despite the promise of not introducing wood chips to the park again, administration digged in their heels, saying it's unreasonable to not expect a park of that size to have wood chips. During this time, we asked the Director of Engineering to perform a risk assessment. To our dismay, the long and protracted outcome resulted in an assessment of low risk and rare event. This is despite the fact that when the money was approved for the wall, it was rated by the City of Vincent as being high risk. Also, despite the fact they had professional hydraulic engineers reports stating it being a risk and there was considerable historical evidence of flooding. We asked what was happening with the wall. The response was that they'd spent enough money and we need to retain water on our own properties. Nearly done. In July 2021, we had a wet month. On the 4th of July, Steve and Ray spent hours out in the storm clearing debris from drains to keep the water draining to ensure we didn't get flooded. Video footage of the event showed the small limestone wall retaining water, but water overflowing and gushing around the sides. The drains in the car parks at the rear of our home were close to full capacity. Again, this is in the video. The gravel garden had created a hard surface and water ran an orange river across the park from Charles Street, creating a waterfall of water cascading into the car park. The entire oval was waterlogged. Thankfully, the intersection of Charles and Vincent did not flood, so the wood chips did not come into play. Thankfully, the drain pit lids in the playground did not blow off, as has happened in the past. If either of these additional factors came into play that day, it would have been 2010 all over again. To us, this was a close call. It was clear, and we have proof that water is not due to our own runoff. It's clearly coming from City of Vincent property. However, it was not over. As the park was waterlogged, the park flooded repeatedly in the month of July. We asked the City of Vincent for sandbags at the reserve and were told to get our own. We spent $750. The City of Vincent refused to reimburse us, even though we're retaining their water. After seeing video footage and photos of the City of Vincent, we were assured something would be done. It took a couple of months, but surveyors came back to the park. By October, I was getting frustrated and could not sleep every time it rained. I emailed the Director of Community asking for a timeframe and explained the impact on my mental health. She referred this to the CEO. The next correspondence informed us they would no longer communicate with us. I asked the records officer for a copy of the surveyor's report. This was refused. In summary, since the 2017 hydraulic report, the City of Vincent has made 3 changes to the park that have contributed to the increased frequency of flooding. 1, removing the pavilion, which we now know in hindsight acted as a barrier to much of the water coming from Charles Street. Without this barrier, we now have an increased threat. This wasn't modelled in the report because it didn't exist at that time. 2, the gravel garden has created a hard surface runoff from Charles Street to the reserve. We have video proof of this. And 3, introduce wood chips which float on water and block drains. These will come into play when the modelled situation of Charles and Vincent drains blocking occurs. So probably to duplicate Ray a little bit, but when a new home is built or a property development takes place, one of the key factors council require is adequate drainage to contain the water in the property. The water causing flooding at Beatty Park is City of Vincent water, and we believe you are required to retain and contain your own water, just like everyone else. We urge you to consider our plight. Our estimate is that the wall will only cost about $20,000. It's not a large outlay, provide us with a lot of protection and peace. Refusing to correspond with us doesn't make the problem go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Are there any further speakers to this motion?
Linda King, Alma Road, North Perth. I know nothing of this matter, save to say in listening, I find it outrageous that we have a problem that's been going on since 2017. And the people that are concerned are being told that the city will not enter into any further correspondence with them. It beggars belief. And please will the councillors make the administration responsible for this matter. It is outrageous. And I can understand the frustration that Suzanne and Ray have. And if you think that they're sort of, irate, I would be more than irate. I would be jumping up and down if this was happening to me. So I urge you, councillors, please do something about this matter. It's gone on since 2017. And their houses and their health and their life has been affected. Thank you.
Steve Burke from 9 Emerson Street. Oh, it's actually been going on since 2010 when we first got flooded, and we've been living with it for 12 years. We had 150 grand in the budget for a wall that would have alleviated all the pressure from us getting flooded. And somehow that's disappeared and we've got no wall. Since we've got the Eco Garden in and Len Fletcher Pavilion, we are now getting flood water from the other side of Beatty Park, where there is no wall. All we're asking for is the wall to be extended with mesh fence. The mesh fence stops any leaves coming through that block the drains. The drains are the only things that take the water away. And we've witnessed it 3 times this year. Water's come from the eastern side. I went in my truck, got sandbags, and it's come over the top of the sandbags. And so that's putting pressure on us. The sandbags have disappeared now. We're getting more frequent heavy rain, major flooding. You only have to look at the news, how much flooding there is now. So we're living in fear. Suzanne's not sleeping at night every time there's a rainstorm. And I just can't understand. We had 150 grand to build a wall. Where's it gone? That's all we want, is to feel safe in our property. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers on the motion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Next speaker who would like to bring forward a motion, please.
Narelle O'Neill, and like other people here, I had no idea that was going on, and I think it's absolutely appalling. And it actually somehow relates to the motion I would like to put, which is, as part of the city's engagement strategy and basic civility, can members of the city's middle management and executive be made to assess how they can better engage with residents and ratepayers?
Can I please have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by, and I think Dudley, you were first.
I can only speak from my own experience, which of course is not related to that. And firstly, I would like to start off with commending the staff of the City of Vincent staff I have had the very good fortune to be dealing with, and I would like to name them for that reason. I don't think they're that rare, but they're few that I have come across, and that's Alec Ravine, Marco Sepik, and his predecessor, Donna. I have had a 7 to 8 month problem with noise, and they have been extremely responsive, professional, helpful, kind, and could not go any more out of their way to help the situation. That is where it has stopped. I have lost count of the number of times I have asked to meet with management simply so I can understand the process. I have no idea what this whole process is, what the options are, what the possibilities are for outcomes. And not only were those requests not acknowledged, they were just completely ignored. And as I said, they were numerous, so no one can say they didn't know. It was a simple request, can I please meet with management to discuss this matter so I understand the process? This doesn't seem to stop at the middle management. I have had experiences at the upper levels to the executive level that have also completely ignored requests from both the CEO and the Mayor. So I guess I'm wondering who is actually running the City of Vincent. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Back up with what Renewal was saying. I think there has been a real failure to engage with the community. It's about informing and consult. It's not about engaging. And an example of why it's taken so long and the lack of commitment from senior management is that it took over 2 years to get that engagement and consultation policy up. I saw the project on the one-page report, and it had a start date. The CEO, when he first started, I met him, he said, we're going to work on engagement. And it took up until December last year. If you want to see an example of how long it's taken, go to the Imagine Vincent website. Go to the very bottom of the page, do it tonight because I'll go tomorrow. Go to the very bottom of the page and click on Staff Portal. And what you'll see is consultation internally within the organisation about consulting with the community. I think from memory, it gives you a date of August of some year. I think it was 2019. They've been slogging at it for a long time, and yet it's taken all this time to get a policy in place. Now, it's got great motherhood statements in there, but you want more than motherhood statements. You want people to get out and actually engage with the community, to actually meet with people face to face. And when you meet with people face to face, it becomes more personal, and they respect your point of view. Over the last 20 years, the best form of engagement I've seen was about 18 or 20 years ago, and it was in St Albans Avenue. And it involved the street trees down the middle of the street. Council had previously put trees in Cavendish, tried to put them in Harley, the community rejected them. Then they went 4 years later to St Albans Avenue. What happened there was a community member knocked on all the doors, there's only 15 houses or something, organised a meeting in the street, 2 councillors came along, some staff came along, and people as a group talked about the trees. And one of the people in the street said afterwards, I was against the trees, but I could see that most of the people in the street wanted trees and they wanted native trees. So I'm happy because I can see there was a process. There wasn't somebody putting pressure on the councillor or putting pressure on the staff. It was a community decision. For me, that was so good because it was face to face. There was no animosity or anger. What I've seen for the last few years is it's always an us and them situation. People are very sceptical of anything that comes from the council because you're not engaging. We pay our rates to get facilities and services. So that's what we should be getting, not bureaucratic responses and, we've got this plan and we've got that plan. We want something done. We won't always get it, what we want, but at least we want to be heard and engaged and give the people the opportunity to have their say. And those people have different skills. bring them along in a non-threatening way. So I think Renewal's completely right.
Are there any further speakers on the motion? This is on the community consultation motion. Do you wish to speak to that? Sorry, Izzy, I can't hear you.
Councillors, Mayor, thank you very much for having us all here tonight. I just would like to confirm what the lady was saying here. The communication is extremely poor with you, Council. On numerous times, I am still going through my depression. I had a massive mental breakdown at the beginning of the year where I came and spoke to all of you in a 17th of February public meeting, if I can remember, regarding the eventual closure of the food truck program pushed by Councillor Toppelberg at that time. And I asked you eyes and ears, David, and I was asking to try to get a meeting to help you guys improve that mobile food vendor program for all our residents of Vincent, because I am a person that lives in Vincent and I know my hospitality industry and I was trying to help out anyway. But you guys are not listening. We did a public consultation. It's misinterpreted. It's not being followed with the voice of the people. And we are a little bit really fed up with this kind of situation because it's leading us into a feeling of a lack of integrity in our council and in the way we live. And I know some of you, I can see it in your eyes, hate my guts. But honestly, this is not the kind of eyes I should have from my councillors, and especially from someone that has been living in Vincent and has been trying and create the best he could for the city of Vincent. But all of those people are right. Some of these people have had the problem since 2010. Like, it's speechless. It's really speechless. Thank you very much.
Are there any further speakers on the motion?
Steve Burke, 9 Emerson Street. From my experience with community consultation, it seems like the administration is ticking the box. We had an experience with Len Fletcher Pavilion. There was a very small sign on the toilet block. No letter drops, nothing.
It's Alfred Spencer.
Alfred Spencer, is that the one? Alfred Spencer, sorry. So Suzanne did a submission to, if it does get knocked down, these are the things that should happen. But we found an electrician unhooking all the wiring on the on the Alfred Spencer Pavilion. We went to talk to him, and what are you doing? He's disconnecting the power, but the consultation period hasn't finished. Oh, that doesn't matter. It's already a foregone conclusion. It's going to get knocked down. So from our experience, it seems like the decision's already made and you're just going out there to tick a box to say, you've put it out there.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I've moved into the area about 18 months ago. I'm getting a little bit disconcerted actually, because I didn't think I was going to speak tonight, but I believe there's a massive development that is proposed along Fitzgerald Street, and I would like to have a community forum about that. I know that, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I know that these situations have been moved from local councils to another department when COVID hit. But what I'd really like to hear is, rather than have a forum, which is happening next week with the developers, I'd like to know if the community doesn't want this or doesn't want it to be as high as they're proposing, whether or not the City of Vincent is going to help us fight that. And I'm now wondering whether that's going to happen, because I think there might be some people that might be ticking boxes for that too.
Jenny, just before you go, Jenny, could you just provide your, you don't have to do it public if you don't want to, but just for the record, we will need your last name. Thank you. As you mentioned, there is a meeting, is it at the North Perth Town Hall at Royal Park Hall on Charles Street, which has been set up by Celsius Development. Council members have been invited to attend that meeting, as have community residents.
And what the forum would take place. So, a development of that kind needs some consultation. They said that sort of thing around, I had two streets. I had no conversation.
So Jenny, there is no application at this moment. They're conducting pre-lodgement consultation, and the City of Vincent does encourage developers to do early engagement. When an application is lodged, depending on where that will be, it should come to the City of Vincent, because the WAPC significant development pathway closed on the 6th of January, meaning this is most likely to be a JDAP approval process, where the City of Vincent remains the referral agency and the officers write the report. As part of that process, the City of Vincent will undertake independent community consultation with residents, and very happy to arrange a community forum at that time for residents to interact with the City of Vincent. So what the developers are doing at this point is inviting residents to a meeting to engage with them prior to them making an application and entering the formal development application process. I will have no role to play in this development other than to advocate for residents. I will have no decision-making role whatsoever. Just in relation to this motion, I think that it is probably something I would like to speak to, because I think that you've all had your experiences of liaison with the City of Vincent, and many of you have expressed that you're dissatisfied. Some of the issues that we're talking about this evening have been long-running issues, and there has been a lot of interaction between individual residents as well as the city and council members. But to say that we simply don't consult and go out to meetings and have face-to-face engagement is simply not true. Today, I met with business owners on Scarborough Beach Road, and then Councillor Alexandra and I went, and Councillor Warner went and spent an hour and 15 minutes with Pennant Street residents to talk about street trees. We regularly interface face-to-face with residents. It's part of what we do as a council. Particularly when we have development applications before council, any item before council, if a resident or ratepayer or applicant contacts us to meet, we always, personally, I will always go and meet with them on any item. So I understand that you bring your experiences and that many of you are dissatisfied with those individual experiences, but to say that we're not doing face-to-face consultation is just not the case. At the briefing last night when we talked about character retention, my question was, can we set up street meetings with those residents to talk through those matters, because it's important that we have an opportunity to have that face-to-face, because some of the issues that we deal with are complex, and when people receive a letter in the post, it doesn't really translate, and we understand that, and we do that work. Are there any further speakers? Narelle, it is your motion, so if you speak, you'll close debate. So Ray hasn't spoken on this motion.
With that Alfred Spencer Pavilion, what Steve said, the consultation was very engaging and accountable. You know, what you should do is listen to the grassroots people. Sounds good, positive, what you just said. But on that consultation, they put a couple of signs up around Alfred Spencer Pavilion. Nobody knew in the area. It's only because we live there. So I've got photos at home. I think the consultation finished on the 27th of September. On the 9th or something of September, Boyne Electrics were there and plumbers were there dismantling. So and Steve said, and I went there to say what was going on. They said, well, they're privateers. This is what we've been instructed to do. So there was a number on the thing, on the sign, so I rang the number, and the guy said, look, mate, it's just a consultation for having a consultation. You know, it's going to come down. And that's probably 2.5 weeks before the consultation finished, and I got photos to prove it. Now, it's all right, look, grassroots people, what we see and how we've been treated. It's all right to have it on your websites, whatever you got, your Facebooks, how good, glossy, but accountable and engaging, you are not with us people here, oh, the ones where I live anyway.
Linda, I'm just trying to record you. You haven't spoken on this motion yet, have you? Sorry? You haven't spoken on this motion, have you? No.
I'd just like to say I appreciate your comments about the fact that you do try to engage with people, and certainly yourself and Suzanne Gontasewski at times have been out to talk to me when there's been an issue. But the issue with the North Perth Plaza and the closure of Fitzgerald Street and View Street was just unbelievable. We were told as residents that there would be a community consultation. There was no consultation, not from anyone on Alma Road or Glebe Street or any of us. I wrote to you, Andrew Murphy, and I said it was just not acceptable. I never received a reply from Andrew. I received a reply from some other person in that department, and the answer was just, this is only a temporary measure, it will be discussed next year in February. That wasn't my concern. My concern was we had a street closure where we were promised that there would be a community consultation and there wasn't. So how does that happen? That's something that I believe was a considerable expense. I mean, the figure that's been bandied around is $750,000. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's a considerable amount of money that ratepayers will pay with no consultation whatsoever. So I just asked the question, how does that happen? Thank you.
Just to clarify, Linda, you referring to community engagement on the development and construction of the North Perth Common, or not the temporary closure on Fitzgerald Street? I can provide you some further details on the background to that project, which I think has been long-standing from about 3 or 4 years ago. So
just like details on what the consultation was with the community. That's the issue I'm raising. There was none. I live on Alma Road. Jeff lives on Glebe Street. There was no community consultation whatsoever. We have another resident here who lives on Glebe Street, and we're right in the vicinity, and we asked continuously when this consultation was going to be. I wrote on the matter, and everything happened without any consultation whatsoever.
Thank you, Linda. We can certainly provide you with feedback on the consultation on North Perth Common in relation to the median that is intended to be a trial. And so that was put in place, but we'll provide you with some further detail outside of the meeting. I think, Narelle, you were wanting to close debate on the item on your motion. I believe you were wanting to make some final comments on your motion.
Just referring back to your comments about your engagement with the community, I think that's fine and it's commendable for the other councillors who also give up their time to do that. That is not reflected in the council staff. Some of them are fabulous and others are utterly unattainable. Whatever you do, they are very they're very difficult to engage with. So perhaps there might be something in the engagement strategy that would encourage staff to better engage with the residents and ratepayers. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, that closes debate on that motion. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Narelle, do you want to vote for your own motion? All those against? I declare that carried. Can I just get an indication of motions to be moved for the remainder of the meeting and the number, just to get an idea of time frame? Dudley, you have 3. Suzanne, 3. Gentleman at the back, you have a motion. Would you like to come forward?
Thank you. Thank you for this, and I'll try not to take up too much of your time. My motion does sort of overlap with a lot of the things that have been said. And it's driven by...
I'm so sorry, but before we start, if you want to...
sorry, Stephen Graves and Mount Lawley.
Thank you.
Yep. It's driven by the consultation and the decision made about the kiosk in Hyde Park. And in talking with people in the neighbourhood, the feedback I've been getting is, that's Vincent for you. What do you expect? That's local government. And there's this mood of a feeling that the council is carried away with its power and that it's not respecting the views of the people. I'll go into that in more detail, but the motion here, and it's a motherhood motion, my apologies for that, that councillors respect the views of the people they represent and ensure they are acting independently and responsibly when voting on council matters. Now, when I spoke about this at an earlier meeting, do I go ahead now or do you need to ask for a seconder for the motion?
I'm just going to ask for a seconder for the motion. Seconded by Linda.
Thank you. When I first spoke about this, you as the mayor and later one of the councillors took great exception to me saying that I'd heard that people were voting as a block, and you thought that was a really offensive thing to say. And I guess that's what I'm asking councillors, pleading with them, please, to consider this, because it's a real trap when you sit on a body like this, especially when you have great respect for the people, to just go along with whatever's being proposed. And this is what gets all sorts of different bodies into trouble. I'm from Victoria, and I know that there's huge corruption within the education department there, where money was being funneled off. There was huge... Casey Council had all these different problems with people just endorsing what people were saying.
Stephen, can I just say, you're making me feel quite uncomfortable when you talk about corruption, and I just would ask your comment to remain respectful.
But there's a reputation growing, and I'm not saying that anyone here is on the take, but there's a reputation that the council is ignoring the views of the people. And the Hyde Park kiosk was a very good example of this. What happened was you did a consultation, and one of the questions, people were asked to decide whether they wanted both kiosk and vans, or just kiosk or vans. And 76%, I think it was, wanted both or just vans. 16% wanted what the council voted for. And what happened was the views of that 76% were just discarded because 6 people in this council decided that they knew better. Now, that's not corruption, but it is...
Stephen, I'm just going to ask, can you just... we're here to listen, and we're here to listen, and we understand that you have strong views on this because we have corresponded a lot on this matter.
Yeah.
But I do ask your comments to refrain from being derogatory towards council members. And one of the reasons I do that is because this council doesn't simply sit in a chamber and put their hands in the air. We had rigorous, comprehensive debate on that item, which is on the public record. So any assertion that we're voting as a block or that we're just looking at what other people are doing and putting our hands in the air cannot be justified if anyone wishes to view the debate that happened in the chamber. It was lengthy, it was comprehensive, and every council member expressed their view in their own words.
Okay, I guess the proof of the pudding's in the eating about that. Whether people, I mean, I've sat on councils, school councils mainly, but community development councils, and in various positions. And it's a real trap. Sometimes people just, oh, yeah, the treasurer's a good guy, we'll endorse that report. And I'd ask councillors to examine, I don't know the answer to this, but examine their own voting records. Do they ever challenge what people are saying? There were some challenges in the debate about the Hyde Park thing. Yes, there was a debate about it, good, and reasons logically put out, but still, that's saying that the 76% of people who expressed their opinions, whose views were denied, not taken account of, they also should be given respect for having strong views based on sensible, intelligent examination of the issues. And that wasn't done in this case. I don't know about anything else. I'm very new to the area, and it's a plea for councillors to please exercise responsibility and ensure that they're being independent and they're just not sitting on an issue without examining it first. I'm baffled by the decision. I know there's been a debate, baffled by the decision about the kiosk, but it's gone ahead. I know I mentioned in my correspondence that the winning tender didn't bother to put references in, which was something they were asked to do. And I mean, people here who employ staff would know that if somebody applies for a job and they don't put in a reference, that makes it very unlikely they'll get a job. So there are all sorts of concerns there. So I'm just saying, I'm reiterating, I just want councillors to respect the views of the people they represent and ensure they're acting responsibly and independently when voting on council matters. It's a fairly motherhood thing, but it's also, I just want you to hear that there's this reputation of the council that it's just not really concerned with consultation. I don't know why the consultation asked people to decide whether they wanted to have both when that's not a possibility. Why was that? It was declared afterwards, oh, we can't have both, so we'll go with the kiosk. There are all sorts of issues like that, and I don't want to go over them. They've been judged before. I want to go back to my motion that I just said and ask, please, that council do that. And examine your record. Have you just been following with the mob? It's a very easy thing to do, and I don't know the answer to that. And maybe you're not aware of how you've been voting, but I think it's really a question you need to ask yourselves. It's a very important thing for people on a responsible decision-making body to ask themselves. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? Or any further speakers on the motion?
Steve Burke, 9 Emerson Street. I'm a small businessman, and I think you're Izzy. You're the guy with the caravan. So speaking to other residents and looking at Facebook forums about City of Vincent, this was not a popular decision. Most people are in favour of keeping your caravan in Hyde Park. And I feel for you because you've been put out somewhere else that's probably not going to be viable. So that's your livelihood. So I hope this non-popular decision will be reflected in the next council elections. That's what's happened now. It's water under the bridge. Can't change it. But we can vote on our feet.
Absolutely, we live in a democracy and the next election is in October 2023.
Sorry, Councillor Mayor, I just would like to add some clarification about what Steve said and what this gentleman said. It's true, having only 4 months to start from scratch a whole business, it's when you invested all your money in the business that you're already running, quite a challenging option. Lucky for me, I'm 36. I've got only half my head left, but I might be able to squeeze something out. A few months in the street, maybe a bankruptcy. In 7 years, I'll get back on my feet. But I should be all right. But what I would like to clarify is what you called accusation of corruption made by the public towards the council is not that. It's not that. It's the miscommunication, it's the misinterpretation that you are doing that are so obvious to us, the member of the public, the pleb, that to us it looks like, well, there's something odd here. How come 16% voted for that, but we're going for it? Oh, wait, where is that investigation about why can't we put the food truck somewhere else? Where is it? How has it been read? Who was in charge of that? Where are the numbers? You know, there's a lot of questions like this that have not been raised. You said on the radio that the problem was I only pay $700 per year for the fees. I said to you, David, in February, let's pay more. I pay for everybody for the electricity for all the food trucks. I offered that to you. I realized, where are the communication? Contact me, please. I need to talk to someone. I'm not well. Where is the exchange? You go visit other business members, business owners. Good. Oh, hello, welcome. Good luck for your business. You open, I'm the mayor. Really well. But all the other businesses that are running here, never see you guys. You came to the park to do an interview. I tried to bring you a cake just to engage in a bit of a conversation, to be friendly. We are both neighbors. We both live. Vincent, you didn't even, you brushed off my stuff telling them, nah, it's awkward. I don't want the cake, give it to someone else. Like, what kind of attitude is this? This is not even being human anymore. This is not being honest. This is not having a heart. And this is what these people are asking you. Have a heart. They have a voice. You have a voice. It doesn't take much time. We may not agree. You may not like me. I'm an immigrant. You may see a cockroach in me. And I can imagine that. A lot of people did that to my life. But honestly, let's move on from this. Let's have a better communication, improved, because this is all what we want. And nowadays, oh my God, I made 850 petitions just to put a petition through to you guys, to let you know that what we want, it's impossible. Look at tonight. I never received an email. I only knew about it 4 hours ago that we had this meeting tonight. So we telling us, oh, we communicate. Well, obviously we communicate, great, to a good level, but maybe we need to up speed that communication, make it to 220. Maybe you guys still communicate with the administration like it was 1990, still sending fax and stuff, I don't know, but we're not receiving them. So we really need to improve that communication, make it clearer, make it more transparent, and then when there is an honest communication between parties, there is always a solution, because that's what we look for, a win-win. We don't want to have a win-lose, and we certainly don't want to have a lose-lose. We want a win-win. And this is all what we're asking you for, guys, all the time.
Are there any further motion speakers?
Ray Stevenson from 11 Emerson Street, North Perth. From my memory, it's only from my memory, the North Perth Commons, 7% of people, respondents, wanted it in where it is now. And I think that's pretty true because I was interested in it at the time. So, yeah, you know, I don't know, is that true? That's my memory of it. It was pretty bad, I can tell you. But because somebody wanted it there, it was there, got there.
Any further speakers on the motion?
From Mount Hawthorn. I just want to pick up on Steve's point about independent thinking and urge the council to deeply and independently interrogate the upcoming budget, because as a business leader, if I put up a budget that was in deficit multiple years in a row, I'd get the sack. And I'd like to see the council really interrogating this process and working towards the financial sustainability of the council now, not in 10 years, but really actively working towards that now, because it is a very worrisome trend that goes on over 5 years that COVID does not excuse. So I'd really like to see that independent thinking being applied to this budget process.
Thank you, Beck. Any further speakers on the motion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried. Next speaker, please.
Suzanne Burke, North Perth. I've actually got 3 motions, but they're all related, so I'll read them all out up front. 1, that Beatty Park Reserve be classified from district open space to neighbourhood open space. 2, stop sporting teams using Beatty Park Reserve and return the park to community use. 3, develop a plan for Beatty Park based on recreational zoning. Do you want me to speak to that now, or? Because
we can deal with that as one motion, so I'll call for a seconder for the motion. Seconded by Steve.
Right, as mentioned before, I live adjacent to Beatty Park Reserve with the rear of our property facing the reserve. Over the years, there have been many changes at the park, all done in a haphazard manner with no apparent overall plan. As a consequence, some changes have had a knock-on effect that needs to be considered and hasn't been. In 2018, as we've mentioned, the pavilion was demolished. This had change rooms, a meeting area that was used by community groups, toilets and a kitchen within the building, and external toilets that be accessed by all park users. The engagement for the demolition consisted of the sign at the top of the toilet block. I'll probably skip that, but we've already mentioned that. Engagement was not sought via a letterbox drop. I've had heaps of residents since asked me why did it happen, that they knew nothing about it happening and no one could understand why they thought it was perfectly fit for purpose. So with the engagement, apparently only 3 people responded. I was one of them. My submission was never acknowledged, nor any of my concerns responded to. One of my key concerns was that the City of Vincent would continue to lease the reserve to sporting teams when there were no facilities for them to change or to go to the toilet. Can you guess what happened next? On many occasions, we've reported incidents of public urination, people changing at the car park and on the grass. What else they meant to do? The facilities were removed. The previous director of community had a particular soccer team in their last warning due to the type of misconduct, and this was before the pavilion was removed. He also imposed a 30-person limit on users of the reserve due to its small size. This director has since left and a new solution has been implemented. The Beatty Park Leisure Centre has now been made available to the soccer teams to use the change rooms and toilets inside the building. In the opinion of us as residents, this is not working. However, it seems unless we can provide proof, presumably in the form of photos or I don't know what, and make constant complaints, the City of Vincent will not acknowledge this is happening and deny it. There's no reason to make this up, and let me tell you, it is happening. In addition to this, we've had situations where up to 90 players are playing on the field in an area that my dad referred to in the 1970s as a postage stamp. When this occurs, players' bags are strewn around the edges of the park, make it near impossible for regular community users to walk around and facilitate shared use. Balls fly into our roller door with a loud thud, balls fly into the playground, whizzing around kids having quiet play. When 50 to 90 players turn up, which happens regularly, the parking situation is untenable in an area already under pressure in the evenings at the leisure centre. It's also worth noting that due to the small size of Beatty Park, proper games of soccer or football cannot take place due to the inadequate clearance around the boundary and proximity to roads. So it's only available for training purposes. So soccer training takes place all year round, summer and winter. Supposedly they're not permitted to play games. So what happens? Every training session consists of games. When the games are being played, the volume of noise that rips through our homes is disturbing. It's hard to understand why so much noise is emitted when it is only a training drill. In fact, it's so loud inside our homes, we have to raise our voices to talk to each other. Recently, when entertaining on the opposite side of our home, so out the front, our guests were horrified with what we were putting up with. The noise was loud and clear, even though we were on the opposite side of our home to the park. We're calling on the City of Vincent to end this madness and take control of a situation that is creating conflict between residents and sporting teams. What I've outlined so far is how this is impacting us as residents. There are many other users of the park that are also impacted. In support of these motions, I refer to the City of Vincent Public Open Space Strategy of 2018. Within this report, Beatty Park Reserve has been designated as District Open Space. According to your own strategy, the requirements for a field to be designated as District Open Space and suitable for sport include it should be a size of 5 to 20 hectares. By my calculations, Beatty Park is just over 1 hectare, so falls short considerably. It is required to have minimum amenities such as built-in natural shade. It no longer has any built shade. It's required to have public toilets. These have clearly been removed. It is required as a sports ground to have infrastructure in place. That is change rooms, toilets, storage facilities. These are all gone. All of this is now taking place in the open. So it's not much fun getting off the bus stop and walking past a guy with his bloody junk hanging out with your daughter. It's gross. Anyway, the purpose of neighbourhood open space is to use the space for recreation. This would allow for more interesting ways to use the park, so it's clearly not suitable for sports. For example, a netball hoop, a fitness circuit, options are endless, but must be sought from the community by means of engagement and must follow an overall plan for the park and stop the haphazard nature currently in place. In closing, I'd like to point out that Betty Park Reserve is a reserve. It is not an oval. It is small, and recent changes such as the introduction of an eco garden have further reduced the grassed area available for sports. In table 11 of the public open space strategy, it's interesting to note that almost every other reserve in the City of Vincent has been listed with a purpose of recreation and not sports. The only reserves that are not zoned recreation are Betty Park and a couple of small patches of land that are actually access ways. Using Betty Park as a sporting oval is well past its use by date, so I seek your support. Thank you.
Steve, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Steve Burke, 9 Emerson Street. Betty Park can be a gateway to the City of Vincent. It links up with the leisure centre. Having 90 soccer players yelling, screaming, swearing, urinating is not a good look for us as residents and for the gateway to the City of Vincent. It's the size of a postage stamp, and there shouldn't be sporting teams of up to 90 players on that ground at night without toilet facilities. There is a sign on the playground to say you can use Betty Park Leisure Centre, but I can guarantee, and we're not going to take photos of people urinating because that's illegal. They don't use the leisure centre to go to the toilet. They go behind a tree. And we walk our dog around the park and we can't walk around the edge because they're using all the space for their soccer games. And I would assume, or I would say, not many of those soccer players are from the City of Vincent.
Dudley Meyer, 51 Chatsworth Road, Highgate. I was actually going to move a motion about this issue, but then I heard Suzanne was, and the crux of my motion was going to be that facilities provided at the reserve should match the needs of the users, or the users of the reserve should match the facilities that are provided. I come from it from a different point of view from Suzanne and Steve, but I think there's a lot of commonality. I think that the decision to demolish the Alfred Spencer Pavilion was one of the worst decisions I've seen this council make. I've seen some bad ones. Initially, it wasn't apparent that it was a bad decision. My expectation that the reserve was being converted to a more informal use and sporting clubs will be moved along. But the problems only became apparent when you heard stories of the urination and noise, etc., etc. Then I heard that there was a suggestion that the kids, because a parent had asked the town what they should do, the kids were supposed to go up to the aquatic centre and use those toilets. That struck me as being impractical and also like a band-aid solution, as if there was no thought all the way through about what the impacts would be. We've heard about the impacts on locals, but for me, I think there's also impacts on the clubs. When I was a kid and I used to go to footy training, there was change rooms and there was toilets. It seemed to me that was a basic requirement. Anywhere you went, there was always change rooms and toilets. So I'd be interested to know if there are any other facilities where training takes place or events take place which don't have club rooms and toilets. To me, it seems to be the basic necessity. If I was a club member or a parent of a child, especially a small child who was going to training, I'd be concerned about the lack of facilities. I'd be concerned about a small child having to go off to Betty Park. Obviously, I'd need some supervision. So if you really want to use the reserve for organised sport, firstly, you have to admit that you made a mistake demolishing the club rooms and the toilets. Then you need to replace them. You either do that or you find another use or uses for that park. And also what I've seen too, especially with asset management, there seems to be this belief that the facility costs money and therefore it should go. That's why we pay rates for facilities. They're not supposed to make a profit. We put our little bit in, so as a community, we get facilities that we couldn't afford ourselves. I wouldn't have used Alfred Spencer Pavilion, but I don't begrudge the kids who might have used those change rooms. So I think you really need to make a decision. Are you going to put some toilets back and have it sporting, or you look for other uses of a less formal use? Thank you.
Linda?
I would just like to speak on the matter and say that I had written to Virginia about the matter. As you know, I live in Alma Road, but I have at the moment moved to 16 Kell Street, North Perth, which is a fair way from the Beatty Park Reserve. So Greg and I were there one evening and there was a considerable amount of noise that we just didn't know where it was coming from. So we went to investigate and we were astounded by the noise as we approached the reserve. So it wasn't just the noise per se, it was a foul language. So I was then asked the neighbours about the lack of changing facilities and where did they go to the toilet. I wrote all this down in a letter, a detailed letter to Virginia. The response that I got was not adequate, I'm sorry, but it says that the training only takes place for approximately 4 hours a week, so we must expect that we're going to have to suffer the noise, and that historically we have only received one report of a player urinating near the ground in March 2021 and have had no further incidences since requesting the club to use Beatty Park facilities. It just doesn't line up. The answer that I got from you, Virginia, does not line up with what the neighbours are telling me and what the speakers here tonight are telling you all. We need to do something about the facilities and the noise, the foul language, the urinating on the reserve and people changing in open view. I have 3 grandchildren now moved into the area from Claremont. I do not want to take them near that reserve, and that should not be happening. I should be proud of this reserve. It is a fabulous reserve, but we can't use it with all this noise going on. And the foul language is beyond belief. It has to stop, and we have to look at the facilities that we have there, and to say that we have to report these incidences either to the rangers after hours or to the management of the Beatty Park Leisure Centre. I'm sorry guys, it does not work that way. You are the admin. It is your responsibility to make sure that we are not subjected to this behaviour. We can't pass the ball on to Beatty Park Reserve Management, the Beatty Park Leisure Centre Management. Is not acceptable. Thank you.
Any further speakers that haven't already spoken to the motion?
Yeah. Ray Stevens from 11 Emerson Street, North Perth. First of all, I'll just read an email from Virginia Moultrop. There has been many, and this is my email to her. As said before, I am not the policeman of Beatty Park Reserve and not going to report every issue every time the soccer club trains. And why should we, you know? You know all the issues over a very long period of time and over and over and over again. Swearing, urinating, changing in public, noise, abuse. Suzanne can testify that. Went out there to tell them to shut up and nearly got a head punched. Swearing, urinating, lack of caring about residents and ratepayers' well-being. You should be doing what Mick Quirk did, who was there before, and attend himself on many occasions and stand well away from the reserve and listen to and observe from himself. Also, he had rangers do patrols and rangers were parking in the car park and watching. This is why they were on their last warning. So Mick put them on their last warning. And when he put them on their last warning, the pavilion was still standing. They had toilets. They had amenities, but they were on their last warning. So Suzanne's daughter copped them urinating when she got off the bus, but that didn't seem to matter to anyone, you know. So what, just on that, what would a fair and reasonable person think of swearing, urinating, changing in public because you pulled the pavilion down? What would a fair and reasonable person think about us getting flooded for all those years, getting $150,000, never been spent elsewhere that you wouldn't tell us where it went? It all comes back to what a fair and reasonable person would think. And in law, a fair and reasonable person, guilty beyond reasonable doubt. What would a fair and reasonable how would a fair and reasonable organisation act? How would a fair and reasonable directorship treat the people who pay their wages, the ratepayers? It always comes back to fair and reasonable. So if you think this is fair and reasonable, I'll continue. The residents want action, not straight bad answers delivered back to us every time we complain. I find it absolutely disheartening that we complain and send pictures regularly and the norm remains. I'd wait your answers to the emails I've sent about, this is another thing, about funding. So that means that just briefly, Vincent funded Forest Park for one of the soccer clubs, Perth Soccer Club Juniors. They've got amenities, they've got toilets, they've got everything. But apparently they're not allowed to go there because the turf's in bad condition. Well, I went down there and the turf's in good condition, and compared to BD Park Reserve, it's in excellent condition. There's a lot down at Forest Park, it's a lot better condition than Leederville Oval, where East Perth Football Club and Subiaco Football Club have to train at this very moment. On top of that, there was Department of Sport and Rec money, Vincent money, etc., to put synthetic turf down at Doreen Gardens at the Perth Soccer Club. So you read that, the training can be there, it's underutilised, we'll get, touch football, gridiron and something, lacrosse there. Never, it was just a con to get the synthetic turf, never been there. We tried to book it out, just to test them out, and they wouldn't do it to us, wouldn't give us it. So you've got synthetic turfs at Doreen Gardens, you've got Forest Park, which is about 4 times bigger than BD Park Reserve. You've pulled down the pavilion at BD Park Reserve. The moment that pavilion came down, sport stopped there, I'm afraid. 2.5 years later, after all of this complaining, there was an arrangement that doesn't work, that people could go to BD Park Aquatic Centre. And there was one sign put up on the fence. Now, last night, because I knew I was coming here, I went and sat at leading up to BD Park Aquatic Centre. Not one person came up there. When I was coming back down the path, there was a guy with his 2 children. In that time, there was 3 F words and 1 C word out loud, as you must have heard one night. The guy looked at me and I looked at him and I went like that, and he just raised his eyebrows. Now, this has been going on for years, but this is what we've had to put up with. So we now believe that this is acceptable to the hierarchy of the City of Vincent. It's not a one-off thing, it happens every time. So that's, since then, there's been...
Ray, you've spoken for 5 minutes, and I think we probably need to start keeping to time because it's sort of...
Well, since then, because I've been a naughty boy, I've been cut off for more emails from Virginia Mill Chop about BD Park Reserve. I think I got that email yesterday, I'm not sure. But just briefly...
Ray, can you just please be respectful of the time?
What was that? Be respectful.
Of the time frame. You've been speaking for more than 5
Well,
minutes.
I'll
I'm
sit
trying
down
to
if,
keep people to time now because
I thought I lived in a democracy.
you do, Ray.
And I have
things
freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
Sure.
I can see that over a period
If it's
of
going to
years,
become an issue and if
we're
everyone's
very
happy to
upset.
listen to
I'll
you
sit
speak,
down.
then continue.
You win, you're the me, you know.
This is your only chance.
This is just incredible. Anyway, I'll just go through the brief history so you all know. Beatty Park Reserve was allocated to the Colts of the East Perth Football Club when East Perth moved from Perth Oval, now the home of Perth Glory, and we went to Leederville Oval. Subiaco later on moved to Leederville Oval with us and we cohabitate, and they were given Leslie Reserve as a training centre for their Colts. That is the reason the tower lights were erected. The Colts have since, our Colts have since, no, not my Colts, the Colts have still moved, have since moved out to Eltone Park in Beachborough, which is closer to their homes as our boundaries have changed and we take in Lansdale and Brabham and Allenbrook. Beatty Park Reserve became vacant and of course it had tower lights, so it was sought after properly. It was a sought after property. North Perth Soccer began training there and that is when the trouble started. They used to train at Woodville Reserve because that's where they play. So that club previously trained there for many decades. North Perth Soccer Club began training there. Repeating, after complaints, Mick Quirk, director at the time, put in strict rules, only 30 players at a time, no practice games, which is happening now. So they've got 4 nets there, so they have 2 games. They're supposed to be away from our houses, they're right on our boundary. But no, I've already said that, Alfred Spencer had not been demolished since. So they're on the last warning, when Alfred Spencer Pavilion was still standing. And Mick Quirk took the cricket pitch away, but most people mightn't realise, because the oval was too small for cricket. He actually took the cricket pitch away and the cricket club had to go. The pavilion was taken down, no toilets, change rooms, but the North Perth Soccer Club was still allowed to train. Urinating, changing in public, noise, swearing. So you've taken the pavilion down. These people are still allowed to train. They're just lads. They haven't got any juniors. They haven't got any mentors. They just come for social soccer. So Mick left, Vincent, then all the work that he and the residents had done vanished. 80 to 90 players at times, noise, swearing, urinating, changing in public. Then approximately 2 years after residents' complaints, one sign was put up, etc. I've already said that, I watched last night. As far as the residents reporting all the time, I have been told this. I was doing justice of the peace work at the Perth Police Complex and asked the sergeant in charge if they would conduct patrols through there on those training nights between 5:30 and 8:30. And that's how desperate we were, or are still. He explained that it was not high priority for them, being they're close to Northbridge, and why don't the City of Vincent do patrols? And it is their property. They have hired the facility out and they should take responsibility. He also said, don't go out there and put yourself in harm's way and don't even report them.
Right, this is really, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible, but it's actually, we've got people here who still want to move motions and the time frame is set by the AGM rules. All meetings have meeting standards to some degree, and we can be here all night listening to all of the emails that have come through the City of Vincent, of which there are many.
It's an annual general meeting once a year, so why not be here for an extra half an hour so everyone can get their
Perhaps
feedback?
we could let other people who have motions to move come forward.
Is there a step up?
Well, Dudley has 3 that he wishes to move. We have all read the emails, Ray, so we're all across it.
You've all read the emails, that's fantastic. Why haven't you acted on them?
Well,
why has it got to this? This has been going on for 3 or 4 years.
Ray, I'm not going to have an argument with you. Can I put the motion? Does anyone wish to speak further to it, or can I put the motion to the meeting? Okay, I'm putting the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Dudley, would you like to bring your motions forward? We have a recording of the meeting, but we're happy to take them in writing if you have a copy in writing, and Wendy can take them. Thank you.
And I promise to be quick because I don't have the energy. So I've got 3 motions. The first one's about this meeting, the advertising of the AGM. So 1, let's just wait for this. Oh no, I'll go for it. 1, that the electors note that in response to a motion passed at last year's annual general meeting of electors, which requested the city improve the promotion of the AGM, the administration stated, and I'm quoting from the response, the city is committed to engaging the community in decision-making and providing real opportunity for all members of the community to be heard. Administration will endeavour to improve the promotion of the AGM in 2022 and will consider how newspaper notices, social media and website notices can be improved. 2, the electors note the ways in which the city has promoted the AGM, in particular, the fact that the advertisement in the 22nd January edition of the Perth Voice was at the bottom of the page in the inside back colour. 2.2, the initial public notices and Facebook posts simply stated that the purpose of the AGM is to receive the annual report and made no mention of the ability to speak or move motions. 3, expresses deep disappointment in the administration's continued failure to adequately promote the opportunity that the AGM provides to the community to move motions and participate. And 4, requests that the council consider the failure to adequately promote the AGM when undertaking the next CEO performance review. That's it.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Narelle.
I'm not going to go through all the details, but the community moved a motion at the last AGM. There was a response. So I would have expected, given that there's an army of social media experts there, I would have expected Facebook pages, emails, advertisements in the local local press explaining that electors can come along to the AGM and really try to engage people. But what did we get? Well, first of all, on the 21st of December, there's a public notice published on the website, and all it said was the purpose of the meeting is to receive the annual report. No mention about coming up and speaking or moving motions. 4th of January, Facebook entry was posted which said the AGM would be held today and provided a link to the public notice. Again, no engagement at all. 19th of January, another Facebook entry was posted. This time it made mention of the annual report, and it said that electors are invited to submit motions. So that's 19th of January, a couple of weeks ago. There was no explanation of how people could move motions or what process would be, just that you could move motions. In the report from the AGM tonight, it says that there was an ad in the Perth Voice, and I thought that was quite strange because I looked through the Perth Voice expecting to see an ad. So I've got the copy here. Don't worry, it's not coal. And it was a thin Perth Voice, and I look around and there's an ad here about something like planning. And I looked all the way through, couldn't find it. But there, on the very last page under tree care and plumbers and all this stuff, was a notice. Who's going to see that? And all it says is, you know, the purpose is to accept the annual report and you can move motions. A mention of the Eastern Reporter, it's actually changed now to Perth now. So again, I went to the shops to find it. Where's the ad? There, back page near the sports section. And it's exactly the same information. There's no engagement. There's no for people to come along, no explanation. I think if you had explained a bit more, this meeting might have run a bit more efficiently. People would be more aware of the time. The issue about the CEO's performance review is not an attack. It's just when you do the performance review, you look at those KPIs. But one of the things is about how the organisation engages with the community. And I think you should remember this. This is a fact rather than one of those high-level KPIs. Thank you.
Thank you. Narelle, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Steve Burke, 9 Emerson Street. I think what Dudley, what you're saying, you want better performance from our admin? Because from what I can see, we're paying very good money for these guys. You know, I'd love to have one of their jobs on 240, 180, 160. How many times are we paying all this money? We expect better service as residents.
Any further speakers on the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried.
Straight. Motion 2 is similar to a motion from last year. It's that the electors, 1, note that 1.1, prior to December 2017, the city's code of conduct had a requirement that council members should respond to all inquiries as soon as practical, but in any case within 48 hours of receiving telephone calls and within 5 days of receiving a written inquiry. 1.2, at the council meeting of the 12th of December 2017, the council voted unanimously for a revised code of conduct that no longer contained this requirement. 1.3, the change of the code of conduct was made without any public consultation. 1.4, the report that went to the council did not indicate the requirement was being removed, either through the use of track changes or mentioned within the report, and in fact said there was, and I'm quoting, little change to the substance and effect of the code. And 1.5, the report to council stated that there had been several rounds of internal consultation and all council's members had the opportunity to provide feedback on the revised code prior to it being adopted. Then 0.2, request that the city's code of conduct be reviewed and amended and that previous requirements of council members to respond to inquiries from members of the community be reinstated.
Is there a seconder, please? Seconded by Narelle.
I think those first points cover a lot of it. There was a culture where you had to respond. Not all councillors did respond, and I'm not saying councillors now don't respond. But a few years ago, I was speaking to a former councillor, he said, "Oh, I'm not getting responses from councillors." That's what triggered my research, and I found all this stuff that happened back in 2017. And I'm getting that sort of message now that people aren't responding. And it's partly because we're new councillors. They don't know, well, there isn't a requirement, but they didn't know there was a requirement. So it relies on their good nature. The response from the administration to last year's AGM said that it was supported in part, and then it said, and I'm quoting, City of Vincent elected members are highly accessible to the community and very responsive to inquiries from residents and ratepayers. Not debating that. Inquiries are nearly always responded to as soon as possible, and a great deal of care and sensitivity is shown in response to issues raised by community members. It also said something will be put into the governance framework saying that elected members should respond to queries within 10 days. Now, I hunted through that governance framework. I couldn't find anything. I was looking for days, 10, couldn't find anything. So if the administration is right, and I'm not saying they're wrong, and they're saying that elected members are highly accessible to the community and very responsive, then there shouldn't be any issue putting something like that in the code of conduct, because then it makes it clear to the community that they can expect a response. So I think you should just show a basic level of common courtesy and respond to people that you represent and make it clear to people that you will represent them, that you will respond to them. Thank you.
Narelle, do you wish to speak to the motion? Is there any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried.
The last one, and I'm not trying to be controversial here. 1, that the community believes that local government does not function well when there are cliques or factions on councils, or if there are perceptions of factions or cliques existing on councils, and the mayor should not encourage formation of cliques or factions and should actively act to stop the formation of these. And 2, that the community requests the code of conduct be amended to make it clear that the mayor has a special leadership role and should not use their position to encourage electors to vote for or against any particular candidates at local government elections.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Linda.
No, I just want to make this clear. It's not a go at the mayor. I want to make things clear so there's no... What?
You're making aspersions about me as mayor and the way I've conducted myself in a public forum. It's noted.
I'm not. I'm quoting some facts here. I was going to skip over this, but no, I won't. There is a Facebook page entitled Emma Cole, Vincent Mayor. This page has over 2,000 followers. The contact email provided is the mayor's Vincent email, which is emmacole@vincent.wa.gov.au, and the linked website is the Vincent website, vincent.wa.gov.au. During the last council election, the banner had a banner featuring an artwork by Joe Dolman, which is paid for by the ratepayers of the City of Vincent. The Facebook page also contained a number of videos, all of which seemed to be produced by the City of Vincent. When questioned about the use of the Joe Dolman artwork, the CEO stated, and I'm quoting, "The mayor is a spokesperson for the city, and as a consequence, the use of the artwork on the mayor's social media platform is appropriate in circumstances." So for all intents and purposes, the Facebook page is or appears to be the official Vincent Facebook page of the mayor. I won't go to that. There is another Facebook page, which is the mayor's private Facebook page. There's a small number of people, I think, has no contact. So there's a formal page and it is her own private page. My issue is with the mayor using the official page, or one that appears to be an official page. I have no issue with endorsements made in a private capacity. To me, that's the person's democratic right. And I don't think that should be stopped. It's about using something that appears or has people have a perception of being formed. I think the impression of there being factions or cliques puts people off from participating in local government because they always feel that the vote will be along factual lines. It also discourages independently minded people from standing for council. So I think to make this clear in the future, there should be some clear guidance as to what is acceptable and what's not. I know that the Local Government Standards Panel has considered this in the past and found that the Facebook page, even when it's claimed to be a private page, is covered under Local Government Model Code of Conduct Regulations. So I think the most appropriate way of clarifying the situation is to include provisions within the city's code of conduct. Elected members, whoever they are, can still support people in their private capacity. It shouldn't appear to come from the city itself. Thank you.
Does a seconder wish to speak? I just want to address this, Dudley, because this is the second time you've raised this issue in a public forum, and you're making comments about me and my integrity as mayor. You had the opportunity to make a complaint under the Code of Conduct, and there's an appropriate channel for that. But you noted when you came to the council chamber, you said you couldn't be bothered, which is something that just does not equate with you, because you will go to all manner of lengths to, find things to prosecute. And you made it clear that there was no case to answer, and there isn't, because I have sought governance advice. I have talked to Welga and I've talked to the department, but yet you continue to raise these issues in public forums. And I don't have a City of Vincent official Facebook page. I have never been offered one by the City of Vincent. I started my own page when I campaigned for council in 2013, and I've just continued that page. It has never been raised with me that this is an official page, because it's not. I do not use City of Vincent resources to run that page. I do it myself. And if the City of Vincent had come to me and said, as part of your role of mayor, we will run a page for you and we'll provide you with resources, that offer, can I be clear, has never been made. And if it was, I would consider it. And if it was an official page, it would be run differently. So you have raised this for the second time now. There's an appropriate complaints channel, which you're very aware of if you have an issue. I have sought my own advice and been told that I have not breached any code of conduct or regulations around my role as a mayor. yet you continue to raise this in public forums. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Linda?
I'd like to support Dudley on this matter, and I'm sorry, Emma. As a matter of endorsing certain candidates during the 2021 election has caused concern for the community, I support Dudley Mayor's proposal that a code of conduct be amended to make it clear that the Mayor has a special leadership role and should not use their position to endorse or encourage electors to vote for particular candidates at local government elections. I have no issue regarding the endorsements made in a private capacity. I personally rang Josh Tobbleberg and Susan Gontaszewski for some endorsement, and then I made my own decision. However, the fact that an electing member may use a private Facebook account rather than a council or mayor Facebook account is simply not conclusive evidence that a party is acting in their personal capacity. As such, a code of conduct should disallow endorsements on a Facebook page by elected members. I also ask that the code of conduct reflects the right for a community member to raise questions during public question time without being interrupted or shut down, as long as they remain respectful. I quote from the City of Vincent's website: "Public question time is an opportunity for the public to be involved in the council decision-making process, as they can ask questions or make statements relating to any matter affecting the city. It occurs at the start of the briefing or meeting, and any member of the public may ask a question or speak for up to 3 minutes in respect to any matter which affects the city." At the council meeting the 16th of December 2021, Dudley Mayor raised the matter of endorsing certain candidates during public question time. I was astounded that he was not allowed to voice his opinion. I have reread what he said, and it is in no means disrespectful. As a community, it is our right to ask questions of concern as long as we are not disrespectful. To deny us this right goes against the City of Vincent's own policies. As a community, we are at liberty to have the matter heard by the local government standards panel. However, this is a time-consuming and costly process which would be avoided in the future if the motion be accepted. Thank you.
Just in response to that, Linda, as a presiding member, if I feel that there are comments being made that are unfounded, that are about my reputation, I have a right to say something. It's very rare that I have done that, but on this occasion, I feel that I was well within my rights and that I did consult afterwards with governance about the statements that I made, and I did not make any inappropriate statements. I am the presiding member, and I am able to address matters when they come to the chamber. It's not a free rein to make comments about people that affect their reputation or that are unfounded. And I'll continue to do that because I'm not someone that's a punching bag for the general community. I'm here to do a role. I'm here to listen. I'm here to do it respectfully, but it doesn't mean that I have to be a doormat.
I could just respond to that, Emma. I've had absolute respect for you in the past, as you know. On the issue of this, the endorsement of certain candidates, I'm sorry, but I have to agree with Dudley. I know you have a personal right for an opinion, but when people read your Facebook page and they know that you are the mayor, they actually think that you are speaking in the capacity of the mayor. So in terms of my own investigation, in answering just, asking general public, they actually felt that you were talking in the capacity of the mayor. I know that your stance now is that you weren't, and I appreciate that. I'm not being disrespectful of you at all, as you know. But I think that in the matter of an election, it needs to be fair, and I think that we fought very hard to get certain candidates elected, and we did it, we felt, on an even playing field. And when a mayor, and when I spoke to Josh Tuckelberg or Susan, they gave their opinion, but they didn't do it on a Facebook page. Ross just told me quite clearly why he endorsed certain candidates. I disagreed with him. He didn't do it openly in the capacity of a councillor in an open forum on a Facebook page. So that's the point that I'm trying to raise, and I think that is the point that maybe Dudley's trying to raise. It's not that you have a personal opinion. We absolutely respect that you have a personal opinion, but it shouldn't be delivered in a manner that suggests it's in the capacity of the mayor. That's all that we're saying. So I appreciate that which everyone tells, and I appreciate that you're very upset about it, but equally so are we.
Thank you, Linda. I'm not really going to engage in debate over it. I've made my statement tonight and I appreciate that's your opinion. Are there any further speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Are you wish to
Close debate. So first of all, Mayor, you said I questioned your integrity. I did not. I just quoted some facts. I did not question your integrity. You also mentioned the fact that I said I couldn't be bothered, and I couldn't. It's not a big deal for me. Going to the standards panel, I don't think there's any rule that's been broken. It's not about legal rules. I probably could mount a case to the standards panel and maybe they'd spend some time on it. It's a waste of time. Waste your time, waste my time, waste their time. It's not about a case to answer, as you said. You mentioned that you'd set up the page, not the City of Vincent. Well, the community can't tell that. If you go and look, and I don't use Facebook, but I went and looked and I clicked on about links and emails, and it's the Vincent website. It's the Vincent email site. So my impression is that it's the Vincent website. I would have assumed you'd have some input into what's posted, but the staff know. I don't know. It's about perceptions. So it's not about legal arguments. It's about the perception of the community and making it clear in the future. You've got the right to support anyone. I've got the right to support anyone. It just shouldn't come from, or shouldn't appear to come from the City of Vincent. Mayors have always supported teams, and always will. But in the past, because you didn't have Facebook, they were doing it in different means. So what I want to do is make it clear so that people don't get misled. And this assumption that if the mayor supports a candidate, that's a positive. It might go the other way. Thank you.
Well, that closes debate. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I'm voting on this one. That's carried. Are there any further motions this evening?
Thomas Young in Highgate. My motion is that the kiosk agreement be set aside, put to one side, and that a proper survey be conducted, a survey that has not got any connection to any member of the council or any family member of the council. The survey that I completed online, when I looked at it, the first thing I thought of was that this is a survey not trying to find an answer to a question, but trying to find the correct question to get the correct answer. It looked dodgy. The council is looking dodgy because of it. You keep coming up with surveys that you know what the answer is going to be because it's set up that way. It's easy to do it. So the kiosk should be put to one side.
Can I just ask a question? Is this just a general comment or are you moving a motion?
That is my motion, that the kiosk agreement should be put to one side and a proper survey done with proper people doing it, not council people. It should not have anything to do with council.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Linda. Do you wish to speak any further to your motion?
Yes. That deal was the worst deal I've ever seen. I would also like to know, because originally it was 9 months free, then it changed to 3 months. I would like to know what pressure was brought, who brought it, to change that agreement. It was a good deal and it just got worse. So why would you do something like that? Was pressure brought by someone? I don't know. That is the worst decision this council I have seen make. You have a perfectly good arrangement. It is liked by everybody. And on the consultation, if you want to know what the people thought, go down to the park and ask them. Get out of the tower, go down there, speak to the people, actually talk to them. Don't run a survey that's dodgy. It doesn't work. It doesn't look good. I was there at the meeting and someone said the optics on this don't look good. The optics on this look crap. You look seriously bad. Come next election, how many of you can have a seat? That's my question. Thank you.
Does the seconder wish to speak to the motion? Are there any speakers to the motion? Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Are there any further motions from the floor? We do have two motions that were provided in writing prior to the meeting, so I'd just like to ask the Manager of Executive Governance to read out the first motion.
Thank you,
So
Mayor.
we have three additional. There's two that were received before the meeting and one received in writing at the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. The first is from Tiffany Elliott of West Perth, who requests that council investigates the adequacy of street lighting in Florence Street, West Perth, for traffic and pedestrian safety. In support of that motion, she notes that it's well researched that well-lit streets can improve surveillance and increase risk of offenders being detected. This is to help people feel safer with well-illuminated streets. This can further assist with the deterrence of crimes through ease of surveillance, and wishes the city to consider improvements to Florence Street, West Perth, for that better lighting at the AGM.
So this is quite a straightforward motion, just to request surveillance lighting on Florence Street. Murray, are you happy to move that motion? Or we don't have a mover because because Tiffany's not here. Are you happy to move it on her behalf? Thank you. And is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Linda. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Murray? Do you wish to speak to it? Yep.
I know Florence Street very well because I often walk up and down Florence Street to go through Biddy Park to Sis Lake and all sorts of places from there. But Florence Street at night time, and as soon as it's dark now, it's very dark. And there are patches, you know, you could get hit on the head and no one wouldn't even know. It needs to be lit up a lot more, especially outside Tiffany's house. And I think a bit further along, yeah, outside the place that's now been demolished, that's quite dark along there too. And so that's my comment.
Thank you, Murray. Appreciate you speaking on Tiffany's behalf. It's appreciated. Linda, do you wish to speak to the motion? Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? I'll put it. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. Manager, you have a further motion?
Thank you, Mayor. A motion has come from Lyle Bear of North Perth, who goes into a lengthy preamble in respect to maintenance of street verges, particularly those, maintenance of verge street trees, particularly those that are not under power lines. And his recommendations in his motions is that council consider possible solutions to improving the current position in respect to street trees underneath that are not under power lines, would be for council to ensure that at the very least, say every second year, perhaps or on a rotational, locational basis to minimise budget impact, place a greater focus on the non-power line side of verge trees, proper maintenance, including at a minimum removal of all dead branches and all overhanging branches from both the power lines and all branches extending over the footpath into the private properties. This would also provide an improved streetscape look for those verge trees too, which are sadly very neglected looking. Perhaps I'll turn this.
Clarify insurance claim petitions of homeowners are damage caused by verge trees, including power representative costs, electricity and other freight costs and Western Power charges. We understand from the Western Power
removing branches that overhang or encroach within 2 metres of any power lines. And also dot point that council provides at least annual updates on the status of underground power installation program for the whole of the city of Vincent location. Clearly this would, if commenced, go a long way to solving the issues I've raised above are of concern to many private owners.
Would any elector be happy to move that motion on behalf of Lyle Bear? Moved by Ross. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Linda. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Ross? Linda, do you wish to speak to the motion? Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? I'll put it. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. We have one further that was tabled this evening, but the person who tabled is no longer present.
Actually, and another late one that came through the email at just after 5 today, and both are concerning the Hyde Park kiosk, both with similar sentiments that were presented by Mr. Young in his motion. The first one is from Tom Young. In fact, Tom put his motion, so I won't. He's here and done it. So the second one was from Joanne and Stephen Bates, who asked that we would like to propose a revocation of the issue revote on the issue regarding food trucks at Hyde Park. They are an intrinsic part of the developing culture at Hyde Park and would not like them to disappear. I suspect the motion carried that was moved by Mr. Young would essentially cover off on that sentiment. However, if the floor wishes to move that motion as it stands, the opportunity is there.
I'll leave it in your hands, electors. We do have a similar motion that has been put and carried, but if you'd like to move this motion, please feel free to. Is there a mover? I think then we're satisfied that that has been carried and dealt with through the previous motion. Okay. A last call for any motions before we close the general meeting of electors. Just to give you then, if that's the end of general business, just to give you a bit of an indication of what happens from here in terms of the process. Just some of the text from the preamble to the meeting talks about the decisions of the annual meeting of electors are not binding on council, but as required by the Local Government Act of 1995, the reasons for any council decision on a decision of this meeting are to be recorded in the minutes of the council meeting. So what that means is that given administration will look at the extent of the resolutions passed this evening and time to take to respond to those. So I might get some feedback from administration, but I would guess within the next month or 2 months, we will have those resolutions come back to council with a response from administration, and council will then vote on receiving those motions, resolutions of the annual general meeting of electors. Given that you are here and I believe registered, I will assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, administration, but I would hope that you will receive an email alerting you to the fact that that report will be coming to council so that you're aware and that you can attend that council meeting. So are there any questions about the process from here? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight and thank you for the range of motions that you have put forward. I will close the meeting at 9:28 p.m. Thanks, everyone.